Check. Check 1, 2.
Aaron, you're real strong over there.
All right, let's go. I'm ready for the questions.
Bring them heat.
Bring
So
the thunder.
So we did something a little different last week, and no, we didn't do anything different last week. What did we do last? It was the same. We're gonna do something different this week, and Mr. Chris Knighton here is gonna lead this week's podcast.
Oh, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think it is.
We have a very special guest this weekend on our podcast.
Yeah.
Wonderful, godly man, Aaron Knight, is on the podcast this evening.
I used to have a round of applause thing on my old soundboard where it would sound like 38,000 people were clapping for you.
I just saw a Facebook post today. The man, the myth, the legend, Aaron Knight.
Man,
Rick Dykes put on there.
Did he really? The
Yes.
man, the myth, the legend?
I'll go with myth.
The myth.
That's all I can claim is myth.
But isn't a myth like something that's unproven?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't know why they throw that in there. It's not a very good
The
thing.
man, the myth.
Yeah,
Maybe it's like a tall.
Definitely a man, a
Have y'all-
myth.
Yeah.
Have y'all
Legend,
seen
not-
the
not
T-shirt?
Still working on the legend part.
Have y'all seen the? Oh, that's funny. I'm about to bring this up. Have y'all seen the T-shirt that's like the man and it points up, and it says the myth and it says the legend and points down?
No,
I ain't seen that.
hadn't seen that one.
Is that on the air?
Oh,
Is that what?
Cut.
all right. Sorry about that. So So episode 4. We're in episode 4
Oh, the ManCast.
of the ManCast. What do you think about that name, Aaron?
It's manly.
I'm surprised we hadn't gotten cut off of air yet. You know, it's pretty impressive.
Okay.
Good deal.
For some reason, I forgot. Thought I forgot to hit record on that camera. So, yeah, no. I looked it up last week, and there's actually 2 or 3 other podcasts named the ManCast.
Yeah. When I look it up, I'll see that.
All 3 of which have 3 episodes, and they were filmed like 7 years ago or
Okay.
4 years ago. Some of them. So I feel like we're one episode away from differentiating ourselves.
So this episode right here is where
We
the
need to be
rubber meets the
committed.
road, man.
This
Yeah.
is going to put you on the map right here.
I feel like this is going to put all of us on the map. And if Jay Leno calls, I mean, we do what we do with
Is he
it.
still around?
He is. He's doing strictly car stuff
Okay.
now, which I feel like after he caught his face on fire,
Yeah.
He has a face for radio.
you got to pull it back a little bit. Yeah. So anyway, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Oh, you're good, man. So last week we had talked about, letting me lead this deal. And we had mentioned, you told me, pray about what you want the topic to be. So I was like, well, I want the topic to be about testimonies. So me and Brett kind of talked about it, and I was like, Tuesday, it's like one of the best testimonies I've ever heard. It's this gentleman right here, Aaron. So I came up with a list of questions. We may not get through all 5 of them.
Oh, I told him to come up with 3.
So I picked 5, so, and they're not in any order, but just, I'm just curious. I'm just going to start with the first one. I did a little bit of research.
Wait, hold on. Before we dive into questions, tell us about yourself.
Yeah. Tell us about
Just
yourself.
a quick, little.
Well, my name is Aaron Knight, and I was pretty much born and raised in Chelsea, Alabama, where we're sitting at right now. I am 50 years old, turned 50 back in January. I have 5 kids, 4 daughters, 1 son, several semi-adopted kids.
More than he'll allude to. Yeah.
Yeah, probably about 10 altogether.
Don't get it twisted, though. These are kids that he calls his kids. Like, these are not.
Well, they call me Dad.
These are not
and
those
they
weird
need money.
These are not those weird, parental situations where, these are kids that, you became a father figure to.
These are not baby mamas. These
Yeah,
are,
exactly.
yeah.
There you go. That's what I was trying to clarify, right? This is not, that situation. These are kids that you went into their life when maybe there wasn't a father there, and you took over that role.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Most of them I got through my son Drew, so he was good friends with several of them, and they didn't have dads. Some of them didn't have moms in their life, but the really one common theme was they didn't have dads, so they were at the house all the time, and so they would just kind of kid around and call me Dad, and then it kind of stuck, and then next thing you know, we're buying cars and going on vacation together, and
Yeah.
getting to enjoy
messing
being
up
a
all my
dad.
suits, taking all my clothes to homecoming, and messing up all my suits. I mean, I literally have 4 boys over there putting on suits of mine to go to homecoming. All my dress shoes leave my house.
Right.
is
At
that
one
why you
time.
work out? Or are you trying to get a size above them?
No, they passed me.
Yeah.
I mean, I've kind of passed them in the gut, but
Sure.
we're, I'm 50, so I'm kind of just declining gracefully, I guess you would say.
Hey,
All there is
we were
about
at a pumpkin patch today, and I showed Brett. We saw a guy, and I was like, that guy from the neck down is Aaron Knight.
Yeah, he looks just like you. He's
Like, if you could just cover up his head, the rest of his body, like the way he was built and everything was just you.
it.
It was pretty funny. Anyway,
Dude struggling.
not at all.
my
Not at
God,
all.
we should have prayed for him.
Like, got the oil out.
Yeah. Did you
Yeah.
have it in your pocket?
Some-
Did you have it in your pocket?
Oh, always.
He always
Okay,
has
just
it in
making
his
sure.
pocket.
Just
So
making
my
sure.
wife is Kelly Knight, and I've been married before. I was married for 18 years before, and I've been married now for 8 and almost,
Don't look at
almost
me.
9 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah, so basically that's it. I mean, there's probably some of the questions are going to probably tell
Sure,
the rest
yeah,
of it.
yeah.
I was a pastor for about 8 years, sheet metal superintendent for I
Oh.
did sheet metal work for about 20 years.
I
and
never
was
knew
a
that.
sheet metal superintendent for about 10, the last 10 of those years, and worked all around Birmingham and Tuscaloosa, University of Alabama, Roll Tide. and all over
Roll
the
Tide.
place.
That's right. Roll Tide. Brett.
Roll Tide.
Okay, just making
Yeah.
sure. About to kick a member off.
Unanimous.
You looking for a permanent position, Aaron?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's tons of other stuff I could say, but that kind of just sums it all up, I guess.
Well, good deal. Well, I appreciate the introduction, and we've all known you for quite some time, and we think a lot about you. So the first question I'm going to ask is, I want you to tell of an important event which shaped and or strengthened your faith.
Dang, he came prepared with these questions. I like it. This is any of our first time here, unless
Yeah,
you've heard them.
I haven't heard them, no.
Okay, so this is
So,
our first time hearing these
I got the
questions.
strengthened part. Give me the other two first.
Okay.
Shook?
So this tell of an important event which shaped and or strengthened your faith.
Bam.
These questions are hard to come
Curve-
out.
Hey, do you want
curveball.
me to drop your mic? Or
Well,
you
let's
got it?
just trying to figure out what. I mean, there's been several that have been really
I mean,
that have been really, I guess, turnaround moments. If it was a turnaround moment where I felt like it was a defining moment
like
in
a
my life,
light bulb.
yeah, I definitely could pin that back to one moment. And then, the camp obviously when that
Absolutely.
finally came through,
Can I-
that was
can I
definitely a
guess?
strengthening. Yeah,
Can I guess?
yeah,
Is it when the gentleman handed you the piece of paper on the
Yeah.
road?
Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh man, how could that not be a defining moment?
Absolutely. I would say
So
that's
tell us about that.
Okay, so the man's name was George Diffie, and this is kind of how it came about. At that time, I was 30 years old, so it was 20 years ago, and I'd moved away from Chelsea, been living in the Hueytown, Bessemer area for a while at that time, from, I guess, basically 18 to 30, so about 12 years. I'd sold drugs up there for about 10 years around the Bessemer, Brighton, Lipscomb area, Fairfield, Inslee. And I had come to a point in my life where I'd really felt conviction from the Holy Spirit to stop what I was doing. And I'd visit church and I'd take the kids to church and whatnot, but I wasn't going all the time. I'd visit Crossroad Baptist there in the backside of Hueytown, and mainly Easter and Christmas and whatnot. And it came down to it was mainly weed I sold. I just sold a bunch of marijuana. I mean, thousands of pounds in 10 years, in a decade, and met all kind of people.
He doesn't do it
Buffalo.
anymore, by the way, in case
No.
the feds are watching.
Yeah, no. Is there a statute of limitations on
I
that?
don't
It's
know.
been 20
That's what I
years.
was-
So.
Should be, yeah.
And it's
We're gonna
legal.
find
Thomas.
And it's legal in some places.
Hey,
so
we're gonna find out at the end of this.
if not, I'm moving to Colorado because I'm not going to jail. But the last, I guess, 6 months that I
This is an adult. You're an adult at this point.
Yeah, I'm
right?
30 years
Okay.
old. I'm 30
Okay.
years old. At that time, I believe I just had my second child. I don't think Drew was quite born yet. I think he was born that year. And so this was early on in the year. I was actually heading to a job at the University of Alabama when I encountered Mr. Diffie. But everything leading up to that was kind of, I think, the Lord's way of convicting and maybe just priming me for that moment, if that makes any sense. I told y'all know the story. I actually, I felt conviction for that 6 months leading up to that moment of stopping what I was doing, of not selling drugs anymore. Obviously I worked a regular job, so it wasn't how I supported my family. We had our own house and everything like that. But
I imagine selling hundreds or thousands of pounds of weed, you were supporting your family all right.
well, it wasn't a week.
Or was the money like going elsewhere?
No, I mean, man, I smoked so much of my profit. I
Yeah.
smoked so much of my profit. I mean, I would have if I didn't smoke any,
Smoky.
I could have just not done whatever. But
You used to
no, it
call-
wasn't a week that I sold them. It was over that 10-year period.
I gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
If it had been hundreds of pounds a week, yeah,
You would have been on somebody's list.
Pablo
I
Escobar.
wouldn't have had time
Yeah.
to work.
Yeah.
You'd have
Yeah.
been on a list.
Probably would have had a yacht.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So 30 years old. Sorry.
Yeah, so that for about 6 months before leading up to that opportunity to meet this gentleman there, I wanted to take one step towards God, and I really felt convicted to stop what I was doing. But I tell you the weird thing about selling, and I probably never explained it like this on a Sunday. You know, all y'all went to church over there, and I would tell this story from time to time or whatever. But I kind of left out this part. But when you sell drugs, it's almost as addicting to sell them as it is to do them.
Yep.
So I mean,
Oh,
when you
really?
do them, you got the physical side of it that we have urges, and you're just used to having it and whatnot. And it's kind of like having a cigarette in the morning with a cup of coffee. You know, it's just what you do. But when you're selling them, you get used to having that extra money. You get used to having extra yourself if you're still doing whatever drug it is. And when you sell drugs like I sold drugs for about 10 years, you met so many people from whether it was Bessemer, McAdory, Hueytown. So I'd get these points and I'd be like, I want to quit. And I would take my hanging scales, those, metal scales, and I'd sling them across the road. And I could still take you to Virginia Drive, and we could go over there with a metal detector, and I bet we find 50 metal hanging scales in the creek across
Just
my house.
Every time you were ready to give up.
Either ready to give up, or the same Suburban or Crown Vic passed my house too many times and looked unmarked, and I just chunked everything.
Disposing of evidence.
Yeah, I'm digging holes in the backyard and chunking scales.
So I don't feel like I know this story because when you talked about the paper, I thought we were talking about when you got in the wreck here and they handed you papers.
No, that
So,
was
okay,
that was
yeah.
definitely a defining moment.
You've
as
been
well.
handed papers a few times.
Sure, yeah.
That's what
So
the thing is.
so
Yeah.
please tell
I never
me
looked
what
at it like that.
tell me
Yeah.
what happened. Like I don't know this story.
So, leading up to that time, I was real convicted about stopping what I was doing and not selling anymore. But so many people, when you sell for 10 years, so many people call and they're like, "Hey, I want to.
It's easy
I need
money.
to. Yeah, I need to." I'll just speak in, since it's been
Sure,
20
yeah, go
years.
for
I'll
it.
just speak in regular terms. You'll say you're going to quit, and then you've got 3 or 4 people that call and they want an ounce, and then you've got another person that calls and they want a QP, which is 4 ounces, and then
Yeah.
next
Right.
thing you know, you're like, "I've got a pound sold,"
Sure.
and then you've got dude across the way over there calling you saying, "Hey, I'll give you 2
Yeah.
pounds, $7.50 a piece," and I'm like, "Okay, here's the math and everything," and I'm like, "I can have it out of my hands in
And-
2
and
days."
this way
I
you
confronted
have-
all this
you-
direction, and
you have all what you need or want during
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
You don't have to spend your own money on it.
yeah,
I'm
and
over
you
here like I don't know what's going on.
and you make $600,
What's a
$800 in 2 days.
Yeah.
Maven's
So-
learning today.
And I'm at the time I'm working at a steel plant, and then working also. I ended up working at the doing sheet metal, but I started a steel plant, back during that time. But in any event, it came 6 months up to right before I quit, and so I wanted to take one step because I felt conviction. I wanted to take one step towards the Lord, and I wanted to do at least one thing. It got to a point where people would come over to buy stuff at the house, and we'd be sitting on my sunroom, kind of like us sitting around right now, and everybody's laughing, cutting up. We got some crazy music playing that we probably shouldn't be listening to, and we got a big blunt rolled up, and everybody's passing it, and I'd start talking about the Bible, start talking about the Lord, and
Right.
I'm like, why in the world am I doing this? And some people would freak out, and they're like, hey, well, I got to
This
go,
getting real awkward.
Yeah, yeah. But
Dude's like,
But that
Really?
happens. That happens more than you would think. It
yeah,
does.
there's so many believers that struggle with things and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
and so many people that are brought up in church that struggle, especially younger people, and so there are so many people that totally understood. But I wanted to take one step towards the Lord, and so I knew I really wasn't ready to quit selling altogether or smoking at that time, and so I said, all right, I'm gonna take one step, and I'm gonna stop selling on Sundays. So I'm not gonna
he's
sell.
the Chick-fil-A of drug dealers.
That's
That's
exactly
what he says. Yeah.
Baby
That's
steps.
exactly what the guy said too. I had one dude that was so mad at me because he wanted to come over. He used to just come over and buy them whenever he wanted.
Yeah.
And, man, Sunday, we were shut down. Like
Right.
it didn't matter if you pulled up in the driveway and cried. Man,
Dang.
it just wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
You thought you were
11:50.
doing right by that too.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's one step.
It's a way to honor, you know.
So 11:50 on Saturday night, man, my driveway would have about 10 cars up it. You know,
It's like a
we're
drive-through.
fixing to like shut
an
the
hour
drive-through
before
window.
close, guys. This is last call.
So I did that for the last probably 6 months leading up to this moment, and so this moment, it's like a regular. To me, it's just like a regular day of getting up and going to work. And when you smoke weed, like we used to smoke weed, I would always have a big joint rolled up the night before. So on the way to the job, I would just chief almost that whole thing by myself between Hueytown and
Yeah.
University of Alabama. Put on my dark UV sunglasses when I get to the job site, and let's go. Let's go hang some duck.
Right.
And so I was just about to light it up, about to get on right there, 1819th Street at Jack's in Bessemer, about to head on to UA, and older man ran out in front of me, and I ran into him. And it's about 5:30 in the morning, and kind of it was so weird because it happened so fast. I didn't see him. I almost feel like the Lord just put him there.
Mm-hmm.
It was his fault. He crossed over right. We can go back to the pipe shop there, 1819th Street in Bessemer. There's Jack's Restaurant. I was coming through that light, about to get on the right hand side on the on ramp and head on to UA, and he pulled right out in front of me, and I hit him. And it really was just kind of a fender bender. Neither one of us are going really fast, and he got out. I thought he would get out, and check on me, and he got out and ran over to my window. About that time, I'm trying to get out of my car. Nothing's really. Both of us drove away from the accident, but we had to file a report. But before he would ask me if I was okay, he handed me a paper, and the paper had a long letter written on it in pencil. And I thought it was crazy because he handed it to me, and he said, "The Lord wants you to have this." Not, "I'm sorry, I ran out in front of you."
This is the first thing he said.
First thing he said to me was, gave me that piece of paper, and he said, "The Lord wants you to have this." And I'm not even sure if I remember him even asking if I was all right, because it was so weird to me. This, and at the time I'm looking for signs from God. When you're in that season, everything's a sign, And so I read it actually driving down the road. Don't read driving down the road, but I read it driving down the road.
Don't
after
smoke
I
weed
left.
driving down the road.
Don't smoke weed and read letters driving down the road for sure. That's just too much. I'm not sure if I even smoked that joint that morning. I was so shook up.
I'm gonna put this one away.
Yeah. It's probably in that car somewhere, wherever it is. It was a Nissan
So y'all
Altima.
just like exchange deals. He gave you that letter, and then you went about your way.
I didn't give him anything. We just had the police officer came up. He the Bessemer guy. He came up. He did the accident report and whatnot. And the guy left me with that letter. So I read that letter as I was driving, to Tuscaloosa. And I'd been really convicted. And I felt like it was something I was supposed to read. Like the Lord was, like I said, for 6 months I had stopped selling on Sunday. And I really was, hoping God would speak to me in some way, which
Sure.
He was the whole time, but I just wasn't listening.
Yeah.
And I read that letter, and the letter was about him losing his wife. And he's probably got family still over there. His last name was Diffie from Bessemer.
It's a unique last name for sure.
Yeah. And so he had wrote a letter about his wife passing away and how he was upset with the Lord for years and how he wasted his life away and how he should have been living for God, and we only have so much time to live for the Lord and whatnot. And I kind of felt the same way, even though it wasn't the same, losing your wife and you were older or whatever. I just kind of felt like I had wasted my life for a while. And so I just took it as a sign from the Lord. So I stopped at about Cottondale. There's a rest area there. So I stopped at the rest area, cried in my car, and got back on the on-ramp, went back all the way back to Hueytown. Went and saw Jimmy Bradford, who was the pastor at Crossroad Baptist at the time, and that was the church we'd visit whenever we went to church.
So instead of going to work,
Instead of going to work,
back
no,
around.
I just called in. I called Philip Ingram. He's a friend of mine. He was my boss there, and Philip and I actually
dude's
had
name dropping in this podcast.
Yeah. If
you're
I'm not
watching.
gonna say anything about Philip then, but Philip was cool, man. Philip was a good boss. He was a good boss.
Yeah.
I didn't always have to have the sunglasses.
Yeah.
But I turned around, got back on the on-ramp, headed back to Hueytown, just broken, really. At that time, I just felt like it was the Lord speaking to me, so I went to the pastorium or parsonage, whatever it was, across from Crossroad Baptist and little white house, and I sat with Brother Jimmy, and really I think that's really where I made a decision for Christ. I think at 10 years old, when I did, it was almost like my friend said,
Yeah.
you need to do this or this is going to happen. And so I don't think I really repented and really knew what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at 30, I really did. I really understood what I was doing then. And So I immediately got rid of everything I had, took everything I had back, got the money.
His
that,
buddies got the hookup that day.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
you
I
can have it.
Well, I just
Going out of business. So.
I took a good bit of it back to the people and everything. Got the money back from people that owed me money and whatnot, and we just cut it off right there. And
What was their like reaction? Like, did you did you clear the air, or was there just like, hey man, I need to sell what I got? Like what?
they knew, good friends knew because we sat on the porch and smoked blunts and
Sure,
I
they
would
were
talk
like, I
about the
saw
Lord.
this
They knew
coming.
something was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like when I left church. I saw that coming.
Yeah.
Like I think they saw it coming.
Yeah.
But I'd still see people that I wasn't as close to and dealt with, at like the Kusamart or whatever it was
Right.
up there, the
Oh
little
yeah,
stores
no,
up
right
there.
across from Bessemer Academy.
And they would say,
Right? Yeah, I think so.
hey, what do you got? And I'm like, I ain't got nothing. I got the Lord, man.
Yeah.
I would see people for a long time. So I ended up preaching in Bessemer City Jail. And so Bessemer City Jail, I ran into a lot of the people that I used to front to or they fronted to me.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's the first place I preached at was for about 7.5 years was Bessemer City Jail on 15th Street there.
Like
And,
every Sunday, you were there like
Every
chaplain,
Sunday.
or
I
how
mean,
does
it was
that work?
like probably it was a Paul on the road to Damascus type, experience because when I quit, I was done, and I immediately started going to this other church, Heritage Christian Center. Wasn't I probably went to Crossroads 2 more months, and then I started going to
Yeah.
Heritage, and then that's where I ran into Matt Winslet, and Matt Winslet actually invited me to go to Bessemer City Jail, and that's
Yeah.
first time I ever did ministry was Bessemer City Jail.
Now
It
tell
was-
how like you already had a foundation, like you knew the Bible, right? As a kid, your dad would sing to you, right?
Yeah, that was
Right.
that's really good. That's something that probably needs to be said.
You know what I
here,
mean?
Because we're
Like-
talking to men, right?
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean we're talking to whoever listened, but it's aimed at men for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say this if I could give some from somebody whose son's already 20 years old and you go back and you're like, man, I wish I would have done this.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot read the Bible too enough or pray over or sing over or, just read scripture over
Yeah.
your kids enough. And even at a young age, I think people are like, well, when they get to be 7, 8, 6, 7, 8 or whatever, maybe I'll do it then.
Yeah.
But even as a little bitty kid, what Brett was alluding to is, and I mentioned it several times in sermons on Sundays, but my dad would sing to me, my mom as well, but just remember my dad doing it in his deep voice,
Mm-hmm.
He would sing to me as a kid. He'd sit up in the bed and sing to me and sing me to sleep as a kid, and I was probably, 4, 5, 6 years old. I was young.
Yeah.
And he would sing these songs like over and over every night. There'd be about 40 or 50 songs.
Right.
They that wait upon the Lord shall
And it's-
renew
and it's
their
etched in
strength.
there, you know?
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
at the end of it, he would say Isaiah 40:31, or I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ. Galatians 2:20, and at the end of it, he'd do 50 verses, and
That's
I'm over here
awesome.
trying to go to sleep, and I'm a 6-year-old kid like, Dad, that's enough, know.
Right.
And I think when I got to be 30 and went into ministry, it was easy to memorize scripture because I think it was just deposited at a young age,
Yeah.
even though it frustrated me when I was at a young age. I was
Sure,
like, let me go to bed.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Yeah.
So I think it helped
do
out.
you sing yourself scripture? Is that how you help remember it?
We've got tapes. My sisters and I got tapes of my dad singing these songs, and there's a ton of them. Some of them were already made by other people, but there's some that he just put rhythm to.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, that's what it sounded like. It sounded like he was just singing Bible verses.
Yeah, I mean, and even
That's
when I preached
awesome.
on Sunday, it was because when I could quote some of those things.
Yeah.
If I said, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love." Sounds like I'm just repeating a verse,
Sure.
but my dad said, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone
that
that loveth
right-
is
that
born
Hard
of
for you
God."
to not sing it.
Yeah, so I had to slow down where it's not. Galatians 2:20, same thing, but where I learned it at, that was 1 John 4:7 and 8. That one was so it was just slowing down what Dad had already sang.
I think that's cool for dads to hear. That you're never too young.
yeah, it was in there.
To be
Amen to that.
To say that to your children.
It just sat there below drugs and all that for about
Right.
10, 15 years. All that scripture just kind of sat down there, or whatever. and
What's
then
the verse? Teach your child, and he'll
Proverbs
never.
22:6.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's good.
So that brings me to my next question. Your father, great man. Every time I go out to the camp, he's always out there just diligently working.
Usually working on flowers,
Flowers,
and
plants.
Yeah.
Would you say that he changed your life?
I would say several people did.
Okay, that'd be another question. Who has changed your life?
Who besides the Lord?
Yeah, who besides the Lord?
physically speaking, who has
Yes,
changed
absolutely.
my life? You know, I'm everybody has their parents. I think my mom
Absolutely.
and my dad. My mom hung with me through all my tough years of being homeless as a teenager and different things. She gave me a place to stay later on. She was always there for me. Always believed in me. My dad, even though we went a couple years in high school without speaking to each other and butted heads during that season of life, was very instrumental, from singing scripture, obviously, like we talked about there,
That's
to
right.
making sure I made it to all my ball games and stuff as I played basketball from 6 all the way through. And my granny, I talk about granny a ton.
Yeah,
but
I knew that was coming somewhere in there.
yeah, I would say granny, a man named Mark Winslet, who's the pastor of Heritage Christian Center in Hueytown. But granny was such a... Sometimes you call people inspirations.
Yeah.
And she inspired, but she was just almost more of an example, an inspiration through her example.
Okay.
I guess if that makes any sense at all. She had probably a better testimony than I did as far as what she went through in life, and for those that... Should I stop here? You're playing with the camera. Is it good?
Yeah, that camera's got a thing. I just wanted to check
Yeah.
to make sure it's on. Sorry,
Yeah.
she was. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
good.
So none of you guys met my granny, but she lived with us from when I was 10 years old on. My parents split up in 1983 when I was 10, and we lived in Chelsea with my dad, and my mom moved to Center Point. We wanted to stay in Chelsea. My mom would have kindly took us or whatever. We wanted to stay here. My granny would drive down from McDonald's Chapel from Wylam and stay with us during the week, Monday through Friday. She'd make me grits, eggs, and sausage in the morning. Make sure she'd take me in her Chevelle or Impala or Ford Fairlane.
All
She
good
always had
cars.
she always had
All
some
great
gangster
cars.
type
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
Right.
that's crazy. I look back at her cars, and I'm like, man, she could have
If she would have
passed for
kept any of
a
those.
straight gangster. But she would take me to practice and whatnot, basketball practice and all that, and she would go back home on Fridays and spend her weekend with her friends, and they'd do their quilting and all that kind of stuff. And she'd go to church at Catherwood Baptist up in McDonald's Chapel, and then she'd come back on Sunday night, and then she'd be with us and whatnot. But she lost a ton, and I've talked about it several times. But the things that she went through at an early age, my grandfather took his life nearly in front of her. He was really in the next room, but she was 44 years old, 1965. She was born in 21. He took his life, and basically right there in front of her, 2 rooms down. And my dad was 17. He was down the street practicing for his band. He was in a rock band, and my dad I think my dad
Wait,
got
Mr. Joe's in a rock band?
Dude can throw down on the keys. man.
Really?
He can.
What's the name of that rock band?
I don't think they had Google back then or YouTube.
I
Oh, I'm gonna talk to him about it next time I see him.
I'll show you some pictures. It's
That's
crazy.
awesome.
He went from singing hymns to rock band to planting flowers. Sorry, I don't mean to sidetrack, but the guy's done it all.
Yeah. He's not quite, George Webby, but he's you'd have Webby on here. You know what I'm saying?
That's
Like,
what I told her. I said, that's the
I
dude's
tried to
like
get
guarded
kicked in
the
the
Clintons
face.
and all that kind of stuff. He's like,
yeah.
Sorry, I
Like-
didn't mean to hijack. Sorry. So your dad was down the street practicing.
yeah. And so my granddad. So obviously I never get to meet him because my dad was 17. But you could feel the effects of him losing his dad in the way that he did.
Yeah.
Even later on, my dad and I didn't talk about my granddad and didn't even mention him until I was 24 years old. So I was from 0 to 24. He never mentioned his dad one time. It
Wow.
was
Yeah.
It was, I think, the first time I had some struggles as a dad myself, and was married and had kids, had Peyton. I think that's the first time he came out and felt like he needs to talk about his dad, and because he missed that. He missed that with his dad, and he wanted to be that for me because
right.
his dad took his life at 17,
Sure.
and Dad didn't have any kids yet. So Granny lost her husband at 44 years old, 1965, and then I believe it was cancer she had. If you ever saw a picture of her face kind of sagged down one side, so she had to have surgery down the side of her neck. She was embarrassed about that. Said she didn't even really want to live because she felt like she was going to embarrass her kids. And then
Yeah.
my Uncle Fred passed away, so she ended up having to bury a child, which is never good for anybody. And then she went through 4 F4 or above tornadoes in her neighborhood. Lost her house over and over. Lost it to a fire in 2006. And then the F5 tornado that came through April 27th of 2011, she lost her house that she had just rebuilt. For 5 years later, from 06 to 11, lost everything. Every one of them were total losses.
Wow,
Yeah.
Just total
that's
losses.
crazy.
It could be so easy just to go hide under a cover.
But she was
My
so
You got every reason to. Yeah.
happy. This is the thing about her that inspired me and really gave me faith that the Lord existed. Was that she was going to be, if the Lord didn't exist, then how could she have as much peace as she had?
Yeah. How could she have joy and all that?
And she had her Bible
stuff.
open. She had like a purple or red house coat on every time we went over there. She's humming around literally humming as she walks around the little island that she had set up there,
Yeah, that's
giving
amazing.
people things. And
Yeah.
and I tell people this, and I think people for a while thought I said it because I was a pastor and trying to influence people to serve, go out and volunteer and work.
Right.
But I'll say this now that I'm not a pastor, that the reason why she didn't sit in a pity party, and the reason why it wasn't just that she believed in the Lord and believed in eternity, but she spent so much of her time taking care of everybody else.
Yeah.
And when you're focusing on other people, you really don't have time to think about all your problems. You don't
Yeah.
have time to think about,
Sure.
throw a pity party. You're just too busy making sure everybody else has got what they
right.
need. And then, so at the end of the day, you're like, I lost this, 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 and this, and my house is being rebuilt again.
Can't that be problematic, though?
What do you mean?
The constant deferral of your problems?
I don't think
I feel like
she-
in my life that's
Yeah.
problematic.
She didn't defer any of them. She just had a different outlook. She had an outlook on eternity. There's no doubt about that. She had an outlook that even though Granddaddy did what he did, she had an outlook that he was where he needed to be.
Yeah.
There's a totally different discussion there.
Yeah.
And then she had an outlook, the same thing with my Uncle Fred, that she believed he was where he needed to be. But she looked at life, and this is probably why I look at it the same way. But she looked at life almost like she had an assignment. Like she had a time period here. She had an assignment.
Yeah.
So every one of her brothers and sisters, my Aunt Ada Banks, my Aunt Mary Lou, my Aunt Agnes, my Uncle Stewart, every one of them, all of her brothers and sisters,
Right.
she was the last one to go, and she took care of every one of them. And I would ride around with her in a long brown Impala down through Wylam. And when one of them was going downhill, she would go over there and like flip them so they didn't get bad sores, and I'd go in there with her.
Yeah.
And she had stuff to do every single day.
Sure.
And it wasn't like you've seen people try to do things to get their mind off of something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She
it
just-
wasn't
that
a
was-
cope for her.
No,
So
that
she
was her
just-
assignment.
she
I
just
guess
kinda-
that's the
yeah.
pretense that
Yeah.
it's like the
you speak about assignments
Yeah.
a lot. That
Yeah.
dash between our dates.
She was she. If there's anybody that heard "Well done, my good and faithful servant,"
Yeah.
like that woman, absolutely
That's awesome.
just lived to give and lived to do, and incredible.
What an awesome world that'd be if we all did that.
we're 35 minutes we've gone by already.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It doesn't
pretty
feel
fast.
like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we got 2 questions.
Yeah.
Well, actually 3 because one was like a 2-part. But
Yeah.
so I guess what I'd like to know is, I just straight up coughed in the mic. Sorry. What I'd like to know is, do you want to continue this and I can split it up into 2 episodes, or do you want to talk about the camp? I'd love to have you back if you don't have time
What's
to
the
finish.
next question? What does it?
Oh,
relate
here
to?
we go. We're going.
I mean, I don't care. I'm good.
Yeah.
So we've been kind of collectively meeting. We're not gonna name drop churches or anything like that, but
Yeah.
we've kind of decided as a family to kind of do our own thing, and we've been meeting and stuff like that. So we watched a podcast
Well, we
this
took
morning.
somebody's advice that told us that church wasn't a building.
Absolutely, church is a family.
Yeah.
Church is the people. So
It is.
I can end with this one. And the podcast we watched this morning talked about being afraid, and how you deal with being afraid. What was a time in your life that you felt afraid?
That's good.
Ooh, man.
Right after I asked him to come on the podcast, he's like, "Hey, hold on now."
I mean, there has been several times when I first got started. Fear of public speaking is
Is
huge.
I'm with you there.
Is huge, and fear itself
That's why I don't
is
talk a lot.
fear itself is incredibly important and important to understand. And so me, I guess I could name a couple times that I was really afraid of losing things, afraid of my life going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
I think at the core of any kind of addiction and bondage and different things like that, I think that there's some kind of fear, there's some kind of anxiety, some kind of doubt that's all in there together. It talks about we've not been given the spirit of fear, but it also says we've not been given fear again to bondage, to be back in bondage. And I think fear, and I've talked about this, through the time of 2020 and all of that, I think fear is the biggest emotion that the devil can use.
That's right.
And so he uses it through people to manipulate them to move in a different direction. Nothing moves somebody like fear.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Oh,
we just
yeah.
came past the door and I jumped out, like you're going to jump in a direction.
Yeah.
But fear causes you to not think about how you're going to respond. It
Right.
causes you to just respond. Like
Just
all of a
like
sudden
react,
you're afraid.
like
yeah,
gut
yeah.
reaction.
Like here's COVID. What are you going to do? Everybody do this. Everybody do whatever it is. Fear moves people in a direction. The biggest fears in my life, obviously as a dad, have been kids.
Yeah.
I start looking at percentages, and enemy tries to get in my head, and it's like, all right, I've got 5 kids.
Right.
The percentages of something happening to them. How am I going to get out of all of them being a teenager and driving without
Yeah.
something
Yeah,
horrible
yeah.
happening?
That's
I mean,
probably
you got-
one of my biggest fears too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I think as a dad, it just happens. I mean, the kids get up and start driving. It's like everything you start thinking
Yeah.
about them at red lights and everything. Why don't you
Yeah.
not take that road? Why don't you take this 2-lane road? No, I don't take the 2-lane
Every
road.
day I wake up and my kids are healthy, I'm like, oh, I'm just
Amen.
waiting for that day. Unfortunately, like that's a bad outlook, but
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, if I can get through my whole life with all 3 of these kids being great the whole time, like especially when they become adults like yours.
I think 2 times that I probably had the most fear, and one time led to a lot of anxiety, and anxiety led to it, and then another time I was afraid of myself, and that was probably the scaredest I've ever been, was of myself, not of another person, not of something happening to another person, but that's when I almost took my life. It was Monday, December the 2nd. I want to say it maybe it's 2014 or 2013.
Yeah.
You have to go back and look on the calendar, whatever that, because I
It's
just remember it was
not
Monday,
on my
December
calendar.
2nd, in Walmart parking lot here in Chelsea, and I had lost the woman that I was dating at the time, and I'd went through a divorce, a bad divorce, lost everything, lost the house I'd been in for 14 years, lost the company I'd been at for 6 years. Got let go from there because I moved off, lost the house I'd been in. I mean, I lost everything that I had at one time and kind of had to start back over. And so I started back over to my dad's house. My dad moved up to McDonald's Chapel. Thank God it was right at the time the tornado was about to come through, because he and Granny were both under the house when that happened. So if I wouldn't have moved down there, he probably wouldn't have moved all the way up there.
Yeah.
So he stayed there to take care of her. And I went into a depression when I moved down to this house because I was starting over the whole thing. And I'd met Kelly, and I thought this was the woman of my dreams. It's going to be great, and then we split up, and she dated somebody else, and I just kind of went in this depression.
Sure.
It was really bad, and I've always been optimistic, high energy, and depression is not like that. Like
Yeah.
I would go to the gym and literally sit there at the gym looking out the door thinking I'm not going in, and I drive all the way home. And depression, you think that you don't want to be around people, but you also don't want to be alone.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I had this season of about 3 or 4 months where I was alone at my dad's house right there on Hargis Road, right there to the right, by myself, just living right there in the woods, nobody there with me, and went from my kids being in the house with me and hearing their feet, pitter-pattering all over the place, to them not living with me at all. Had the woman of my dreams break up with me, and
Yeah.
I was unemployed at the time. I mean, it was just, I'd lost my job, and so I didn't have any. You felt like you didn't have your identity. Like you felt like you weren't a dad. You felt like you weren't a
Right.
boyfriend or a
Right.
potential husband. You felt like you weren't even a worker. Like you just were absolutely nothing. And so I remember going home and I couldn't wait for it to get dark.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I could go to sleep, and I felt like it's time I can go to bed, whether that was 5:30 or
Yeah.
6 o'clock, you know,
Like
because it's
sleep was
January.
it was an escape.
Yeah, sleep was an escape, and I could sleep for a long time. Like people say, you can't sleep when you're depressed. I would oversleep. I would try to
Yeah.
sleep 10 or 12 hours.
That way
and
you
just,
didn't have to think.
Yeah, because I didn't have a job at the time, and I went through a tough time, and so I ended up going up to Walmart one day. I had a crazy dog named Judah, and I went up to Walmart one day up here in Chelsea in the garden section, and it was a day I was in the middle of that whole 2 or 3 month period of struggling. And pulled up the garden section down there. The dog food's kind of on that end, so I was going to go in there and get some dog food. And I just sat there in my truck and cried. I mean, I rarely, even to this day, I rarely reach out to anybody for prayer. I don't know. I've been around you guys for several years, and I rarely text somebody and say pray for me. You know, I just,
Sure.
you know, I rarely do it. I think I texted everybody that ever been a pastor or leader in my life in that parking lot that day, and I felt like if kind of like Paul seeing in the third heaven, you know, and seeing things that were going on. I felt like if you could pull the cover out above my truck, I was in a white F-150. I felt like if you could pull the cover of the spiritual realm above my truck, that there'd have been like demons everywhere.
Yeah.
Like it was the biggest heaviness I've ever felt in my life. And in the middle of a season that was really heavy. I mean, so bad, my sister Rebecca,
Yeah.
if she listens to this, she can vouch. I would go to her house because I didn't want to be alone, and I'd ask them not to talk to me, and I'd sit there in a dark room and a couch and just watch TV.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was just, I spent the night with her several times just trying to get someplace.
Yeah.
So you wanted to be alone, but not be alone.
I drove all the way to my granny's house, 45 minutes away, to go see her because I didn't want to be alone. And I'd get there a block from her house, and I didn't want to be around anybody. I'd drive 45 minutes back home. It's like a dog chasing its tail. It's the worst feeling in the world, being depressed.
Yeah.
And especially when you're, you know, granddad had taken his life, you know, you're like, am I going in this direction? So when I left Walmart that day, I didn't even go in and get the dog food. When I left Walmart that day, I pulled down to the red light. You pull down the red light at Walmart, you're kind of on a hill right there.
Mm-hmm.
You're at least a little bit of an incline by the time you get down to the bottom. And I hadn't thought about taking my life up to that point. I hadn't, you know, considered it or walked through what it would look like or, you know, buy a gun or anything like that. You know, I none of that. And I just pulled down that red light after I've been crying there for about 30 minutes, sending everybody texts that I could. And I looked over to the left, and there was a coal truck coming from Winn-Dixie towards Harpersville. So to my left, if you pulled out the red light at Walmart, and I saw the coal truck coming, and just split second thought, I said, I'm going to take my feet off the brake and just let it idle out there in front, and just let it drag me up the road. And that way I didn't look like a coward.
Sure.
And I let my foot off the brake, and I eased out there in front of it, and it was coming about 70 miles an hour coal truck. I eased out in front. Last minute, I slammed my feet on the brake, put my head on the dashboard, on the steering wheel, crying. I mean, my son's, at that time, he's probably 9 years old. And for whatever reason, I thought about Drew because he just thinks, like, he followed me around everywhere. You know, he's a little kid. And, you know, I was just thinking about somebody going to the door and telling him, you know, your dad's passed away.
Yep.
And so instead of going home that day, I took a left, went to a church out in Irondale, went and sat on the steps. Doors unlocked, people were there, went and sat on the steps. But I was more afraid of myself that day and danger of death and hurting myself than I've ever been afraid of anybody ever, even as a child, you know, harming me in any way. So that's probably the biggest fear moment I ever had. And then my second biggest fear moment happened at the same red light.
Yeah, that's the other paper story.
That's the other paper story.
Yeah. That's where I thought this was going.
No.
I have not heard that story either.
The other paper story?
No, I've heard the paper. I've not heard the story you just told.
Yeah.
I hadn't either. It's the first time I'd ever heard that one. I appreciate you sharing that with us.
That intersection right there has meant a world
Yeah, no joke.
to me. I can't pull out that red light without thinking about it could have ended here, and you know it could have ended here because
it kind of started in the other one.
Yeah, started another intersection. I didn't even think about that.
Ended a life, started a life. Yeah,
Sure
Yeah.
did.
Wrecks and intersections in your life.
Yeah,
you know?
that's
Right.
so
Mess you
far
up.
we're at three intersections with 3 wrecks or potential wrecks involved that are pivoting moments in your life. We need to keep this guy out of a car.
Well, while we're on intersections, if you do take a right on the 280 and go up to the next intersection,
Yeah, make a left.
and make a left, you come to this wonderful place called Hargis Christian Camp.
Another what I would call pivotal point in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a whole long story. You want to do this, or you know?
I think. Me personally, I would love to have you back
Okay.
and finish the questions.
Okay.
But I think I would like to end this podcast with Hargis.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I would like to spend 3 or 4 minutes and just kind of tell us, like, give us a Cliff Note version of what Hargis is, how you became involved in it, and what your goal is.
Cliff
I know
Notes on
Cliff
that.
Note. I mean,
I like Cliff
You
Notes.
know,
Woo!
all right,
hey,
you're-
you know who this
that was
is.
such a
You know,
long
let me,
saga.
let me present this to you, okay? You're going to be in front of random people on the internet that could
Yeah.
potentially help.
Yeah.
And so if I told you got 5 minutes to tell them what you are, what you're doing, and how they can help,
Yeah.
go for it.
I think it could almost just be another whole podcast.
It
Just-
could.
It could
and,
be.
And there's nothing wrong. I would love
Yeah.
to elaborate further on this because there's so many good stories of Hargis as well.
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
lives that changed
But
out
I
there.
guess what I don't want to do is end the podcast without talking about Hargis.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So
I mean,
let's
and then
go.
Mike can come back and just tell the story of how it.
Yeah, I'd love to
Unfolded.
because that's a great story. Yeah.
So what they're talking about is a camp here in Chelsea. So I was a pastor here, and these guys actually got brought into my world.
I met you. Yeah.
yeah,
I
during that
think we
time
all
period.
met you or maybe you didn't.
I think pretty much then, yeah.
Yeah, we knew each
We were
other.
Facebook friends, but
Yeah,
you don't know
but
each other on Facebook.
I knew nothing
Yeah.
about him until
Yeah.
I went to that church.
Yeah.
So when I transitioned out of the church and into the camp, it was it was something that's been around my family for years and years. Hargis Christian Camp. It used to be it was formerly Hargis Retreat, but it's a camp here in Chelsea. To give you a description, because I think this is where people kind of, when you tell them there's a camp down there, they're imagining 2 cabins by a little 5-acre pond or
That's
something
right.
like
Yeah.
that, and they drive in there.
I got it from here. It's a huge camp.
Huge.
I mean, it's a pretty big camp. It's not JH Ranch or anything
How
like
many
that.
people
but
can you hold?
320 we sleep.
That's a huge camp.
Yeah, unless you're Cowboy Church and you're putting people in closets.
Yeah,
so it's
that's
like
like one-
350.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they closets are counted as rooms when they're there.
Right.
But it's a pretty big camp down in Chelsea. It has a 25-acre lake. It's about 25 acres of dry land right now. 12 buildings. 6 of those are lodges. There's a worship center. So 6,000 square foot worship center and cafeteria. It's been there since the 60s.
Huge swimming pool.
Huge swimming pool. It's a semi-Olympic. It's a 78 by 35.
11-foot deep, which
11
you
foot
don't
deep.
find that ever.
Nice
anymore.
gym, too.
Yeah.
There. Nice
Yep,
gym.
Yep.
Volleyball court, newly added volleyball court.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
basketball court.
Basketball court, volleyball court. We redid all those things, but it was a camp that was donated by Estes Hargis. He and his wife. If you ever go down to Auburn University, Roll Tide, you've got a 2 buildings over from Sanford Hall is Hargis Hall, and it's named after Estes Hargis. He was a doctor as a first assistant for Dr. Mayo at the Mayo Clinic. Had Hargis Hospitals named after him. Graduated from Auburn in 1917. Went there 16 and 17. Graduated 17. Lived there at the camp. That's where his farm was in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And in the 60s, they had no kids. So they didn't have anybody to leave their property to. They had a 200-acre farm. And so they were going to try to do something with their property to help the next generation because they had no kids to leave it to. So they tried to find some churches to donate the property to, and finally found a church that would take it on because the prerequisite was that they needed to start building buildings, and most people didn't have the monetary funds and didn't have the manpower to do it. So First Christian took it on. Pastor Tom Giltner, they started building the camp out. So it was built really in the 60s and 70s. Stayed a Christian camp and had thousands of people come through. 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And then in 1999, it was sold to the YMCA, and it remained a camp from 99 to really the beginning of 2019.
Yeah.
And that is when a local developer here purchased the camp. And one of the options that he had there, he had several options.
Did they
but
stay open the entire time, or did they close and that was the reason? Was the why like they wanted to sell it, or they shut it down and then decided to sell it?
No, the Y wanted to sell it. So the Y, this is, I sat down actually with the COO of the Greater Birmingham YMCA when I was in the process of just dreaming about saving
Sure.
the camp.
Mhm.
And he said that they had consciously decided, and their board had set up and decided that they were going to sell one of the camps. So you had YMCA Camp Cosby, YMCA Camp Hargis. And they decided to keep Cosby. It just had been there, and it has different things than Hargis does. and sell Hargis, and they were going to take the money from Hargis and put it into some of the branches.
Yeah.
This is right when you had Lifetime Fitness and all the rest of
Yeah,
them coming out.
yeah.
So they were wanting to do some of their upper leagues, put it into their branches, and be able to, have football fields for their upper, football programs and stuff like that. So they had it from 99 to 2019, and Edelman purchased it at the end of 2018, really took possession in 2019, but he let the YMCA stay there and finish out their calendar season for 2019. Even though he owned it, he let them lease it from him for $1. They maintain liability insurance and whatnot. Obviously,
When can we get that deal?
Yeah.
So you grew up around this camp. Your dad lived right there by it. Like
Yeah.
that, this camp was a big part of your life before it even became like an option or anything that that you felt called to. Like it was like you were being groomed for this.
We've done said transitions and groomed here both on this podcast.
I mean,
We just lost 10,000 listeners.
but it was like your life was leading up to what you're about to tell us about right now.
Yeah, I guess, and you don't know where your life's leading. Like you just, I don't know. Where
I'm
my life's
outside
leading.
looking in. That's
Yeah.
my perception.
Well, hindsight's 2020. When I look back, it definitely was leading in that direction to saving the camp at some point. But if you would have told me even in 2015 when I got married out there, that in basically 4 years from that point,
Yeah.
from 2015, I got married right there by the lake.
Yeah.
If somebody would look at me on the day I got married out there and said, "Hey, in 4 years,
Yeah.
this camp is going to be sold, and
Yeah.
you're going to have to cut grass out here for 2.5 years
That's
and
right.
bury scripture and pray over it and stalk millionaires, and we're going to save it," and I would have said,
Right.
"That sounds crazy."
So to not get into too much detail, so we can have another podcast
Yeah.
about this. You took over. You entered you tried to buy the camp, right? You did. You are
Yes, I tried to buy the camp without money.
most definitely without money. It's the most successful purchase of a property without any money that I've ever seen in my
With
life.
a zero turn. That's all he had.
Without any money and without any plan.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
basically had a lawnmower and a broke down old trailer, and I just went out there, cut grass, and buried scripture. And
And you're just your goal here was to get a meeting with the developer. That was your
Yeah.
goal. That was the entire Didn't you say you were bringing him Chick-fil-A and like bringing him lunch, dropping off at his office, and just mowing the camp, just trying to get that opportunity to meet?
yeah,
Did you even know what you were going to do in that meeting?
No, Lord no. No. I still don't. Even when I talk to him today, I still don't know what I'm doing. I just taking money.
Yeah,
That's
you just
basically
taking
it.
money. It usually solves everybody. I mean, you bring me money, I'm okay.
Yeah. No, it was when. So to give it kind of I'll try to go Cliff Notes from here on, but I don't know if we can do it or not. But
You're good.
if I can do justice to it.
You're good.
So
We'll make the podcast longer if we need to. I mean,
Okay.
it's what it is.
if I'm boring y'all out there, just turn this off. There's got to be something better to listen to. So I think I've always, like I said before, I think everybody is called to seasons and assignments in their life, and this is the reason why I took this on. Is I felt like it was something that God had truly given me to do, and I'm not saying that He wouldn't have given it to somebody else to do, but I knew what He had asked me to do, and I think everybody's life is basically, and I've said this before on Sundays,
Sure.
I don't think it's really measured in years. I mean, you got the Old Testament stuff with Methuselah, and they'll get 967 years they lived, and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think more than anything, if you look at everybody's life, like from Elijah to Elisha to everybody else, they had assignments, and when their assignment was done, that was it. It's like in the New Testament, when they speak of David, they say when David had fulfilled his purpose in his generation, he fell asleep. It's like God said,
Yeah.
when everything I had for you to do in the
Yeah.
time that you were going to be there, time being the generation, was done, then he just fell asleep, and that was it.
Well, all the way back to Jesus, right? On the cross, it is finished.
Yeah. I mean, there was a
Right?
time
It's not
period.
about this
Yeah.
is my. It's
It was 33 years. There was a time and a season, like Ecclesiastes 3 says, there's a time and a season for everything. And I think with people, it's assignments. So with the church, it was, at the time, when I first got there, it was like, hey, let's save this church from foreclosure. Let's all do this together. And really, the Lord ultimately does all of these things, but we just walk it out with Him. And with the camp, it was basically, I began this journey of, oh, is it still on? Okay. Are we totally paused?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pause.
We're
Okay.
ran out of battery. Keep going.
You're back on?
This camera has a thing where it shuts off after 30 minutes.
Okay.
So I have to start a new video file every 30 minutes. So I try to do it when you're not talking. That
Yeah.
way I can do it without nobody noticing, but I don't know.
We let him down.
Is that why you keep pointing at me?
That's why I keep looking at you guys. I'm like, say something so I can stop that camera and start it over.
I'm like, I see you.
Yeah. Back at you.
He's pointing at your sunburn.
You need to
Sorry.
pee.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So basically, this whole place was a camp all the way until the beginning of 2019, and the YMCA was still there, but it was purchased at this time and was set to be tore down, and that was one of the biggest option was to just tear the place down, all the buildings, the lodges, and whatnot, leave the cafeteria there, and build houses around it. And they had some great value for that, for the developer. And I
They
was
would have
down
been
there.
nice houses too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
around
mean,
the
he already.
lake. Yeah.
Well, for context, he already owned 6,000 acres adjacent to the camp, and there's already like 1,400 houses going in there for Pine Mountain Preserve.
Yeah.
So it's just an easy thing to do. It's kind of a
Sure.
foregone conclusion that we just extend the subdivision into there. Beautiful homes, great developer, great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Love you. He's also my landlord.
Yeah.
Currently. I'm gonna love him just as much when he's not.
That's right. That's right.
But so we kind of came into the whole thing, it was October of 2018. I had received an email that from my dad, who used to work out there as like a maintenance guy after he retired from his real job. I received an email that the camp was going to be sold, and so we all kind of had our foregone conclusion that it was going to be this developer to purchase it, and so I still had the email somewhere. I tried to look it up the other day, but I sent my dad back an email, and I said I'm praying that something else happens, something different happens. I wish I would have just framed that email because hindsight's crazy.
Little did you know. Yeah.
So my thing was this, and it was kind of selfish, but kind of not. I would pray down there by the lake. The other paperwork that you were talking is for a different maybe episode or whatever. That's when
Yeah. Sure.
I got served divorce papers at that same intersection that I almost took my life at. My divorce papers went in the lake right there in the same spot that I got married in the camp by this bench. And, I wanted to preserve that spot. And I'm just seeing through the eyes of every other individual out there.
Yeah.
Everybody in Chelsea was saying, we've already heard this. Rumors get started in a small town. We've already heard that these lots are sold. We've already heard I've got a friend that's, buying this over here. And so everybody had already had in their mind exactly what all was going with it. It's just a big deal to a small town when you take away their camp.
That's
Not
right.
that he did, but the Y sold it. I mean, you can't blame him for buying it. Somebody else was going to buy it, some other
Sure,
developer.
Yeah.
And so with me, it was like this spot is sacred to me. Not the whole camp at the time, but this one spot by this bench is really sacred because that's
Yeah.
where I married him. You're fixing to put a house. Somebody's living room is going to be sitting right on top of where I,
Right.
kissed the bride at.
That's
right.
right.
Right where I threw the divorce papers in the lake and wrote Matthew 19:6 on them. You're going to, sell this and build some kind of house there. Not
I'm
so
gonna
I
need
was
you to
like,
hit me with Matthew 19:6.
whatever God has brought together, let no man separate.
That's right.
That's good.
So-
Okay.
So I wrote
like
that on there on our divorce papers, threw it in there, and they're in the lake, dissolved, and it's been years and years ago, obviously. February 15th, 2017. Fell on a Wednesday. It was the day after Valentine's Day. That's a different episode, though. But, my prayer at first was, this sacred place for me, not for everybody, but for me, this sacred place where, God had done some miracles and whatnot. I want to build a house right there. So I wanted to pursue the developer. So I called several people, hey, do you know if he's bought it? Do you know if he would sell me this one? Do you know what type of houses have to be there? Da-da-da-da. Had all these questions or whatever. So in October 2018, before he took possession of it in 2019, the Y was still there, but before he took ownership of it, I began to pray in October of 2018 that, the developer would find favor with me, that I would be able to build a house there and whatnot, and secure the spot. So about a month into praying about that, I'm out there praying, and I don't know if you've ever prayed for something and you're like, okay, something's off. I don't feel good about praying about this. There's some things you're supposed to pray about.
Sure.
I hope I pray
Almost
for
like you're afraid of the answer.
not afraid of the answer, but just something.
Felt wrong.
It felt like God had a different. You
You have conviction about you praying about it.
I almost felt like I was praying for something that wasn't God's will.
Yeah, like
I'm
you
with
feel.
you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like he wanted to go in a different direction, but me, for whatever reason, I'm praying to build a house there. And so trying to shake that out was tough. But I remember being down there one day and specifically hearing worship music coming out of Cannon Hall, which is the worship center. And you, kids are over here playing, and you have one group. I remember they were reading Daniel, because when I passed by to go to the cross, they were reading Daniel and whatnot. And so I felt like the Holy Spirit in one moment was like, let's don't build a house, let's save the camp.
Yeah.
You know, which that time
A little left turn there.
so at that time I am 2 years into the church. March 27, 2016 was my first Sunday there. I'm 2.5 years, so this is October of 2018. I'm 2.5 years in. I stayed there for about 7.5 years. So that's when I started saying the Lord was going to save the camp, and everybody thought I was crazy.
Sure.
Everybody at the church and everybody everywhere was just like, okay, whatever, you know. I've heard this rumor.
Yeah, the next question was how.
Yeah. So I didn't. I just basically said, look, you know, there's a long story to it, but I just basically said, Lord, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to show me that you're in it. Like, throw the fleece out. You got to show me that you're in it. Show me what to do, and I'll run the thing out. Now, the one thing I didn't say was, Lord, it don't matter how long it takes.
That's right.
And that was one thing that I probably wasn't ready for, was how long it was going to take.
Yeah.
Now, if he would have told me to begin with, it's going to be years, I'd have been like, I ain't got years, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't do that. But, you know, if he'd have told me exactly how many years, I just ran it out and said, oh, great, it's going to finish out right here.
Yeah.
But when you got an open-ended promise and he says, just stand on the promise, and you're
Yeah.
like, all of a
Open-ended
sudden-
uphill promise. Like,
Yeah.
no easy task.
yeah, with no direction, no answers. It really was literally like this, like Moses leaving. Not that I'm like Moses at all, except that I just was ignorant of whatever he had planned for.
Yeah.
But like Moses leaving Egypt and saying, I'm not telling you exactly where you're going. I'm not telling you how you're getting your food. I'm not telling you how you're getting your direction.
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you there's a rock there that's going to produce water. We're going to throw manna down from heaven, and
Yeah.
you're going to be following a fire at night and a cloud during
That's
the day,
right.
and
So
you know, that kind of stuff. And he just provided in a time of
take us
Unknown.
to the moment you approached the developer about buying the camp, and what he said, and what the price was, and like if he was willing to sell it. Like, take us there.
So in July of 2019, we went to a camp out there. 33 kids got saved out there. Lord did so many great things that camp. And the Y was about to shut the doors and turn it over to Edelman officially. The release was about to be over Labor Day weekend. And I felt like it was finally time, because from October 2018 to that July of 2019 when we had plugged in camp, I had been praying over the place but hadn't went to his office. So I felt like this was the moment in time we're going to do this, you know. So I was like, I'm going to put together a proposal, and I'm not business minded at all. But I went ahead and put together a proposal. My wife typed it up and everything. I put it in a manila envelope. I got all these kids
Official.
from different.
Manila, very official Manila.
Yeah, it's,
Sorry.
it was. I still look back and think that's the dumbest proposal. Like kids.
All
with
right, Kelly, I'm
crayon.
gonna have you type this thing up. Anybody got a Manila envelope?
Yeah, we can't do it without manila envelope. What are you doing? So we put it in there, and this was really what I thought sealed it, was that, you know, I had 300 kids gathered around it in the worship center out there because we were at camp, anointed it with oil. We prayed over it. I got out of my camp clothes, put on some nice clothes, drove up there, found his office, had to Google where his office was. It was up in Mountain Brook. Pull up to his office thinking that, you know, this is going to be great. This is how the Lord's going to do it. He's going to speak to me today, and it's going to be amazing. So when I came up there, had the envelope. I walk in, Anna McConaughey, a sweet lady, I'm still friends with her on Facebook. We still keep. She knows the whole story because she
Yeah.
saw me over and over again.
She was there.
So she said that he was busy that day, and so I sat down with her, and there was a little kitchenette to the right when you go in his office, still there. I got a picture of it on my phone I took the other day when I was there taking $50,000. We sat down in that little kitchenette, and I told her what I felt the Lord wanted to do with the camp, and she said she'd give it to him. And so he didn't have time to talk to me, but after about 8 or 9 months of praying, I was like, I don't want to go back 8 or 9 months of praying. Like, I felt like there's something I needed
There
to
needs
do.
to be
Yeah,
a step. That,
There's a
that
tension
happens here.
in
Yeah.
the Lord your God will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. And God, what do you want me to do on this end?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make it happen. I'm just trying to do whatever you're telling
Well,
me
in
to
that
do.
last 8 or 9 months, you're working towards that moment, and so for
Yeah.
that moment to not get some change, some next step, some fulfillment, it had to be like
Yeah, it was a bummer.
almost like you had to go backwards from there. It felt like.
Pretty much. In the natural, everything stayed the same. So I went back home. I didn't want to. When I drove into your neighborhood right here, had a sign to the right there. It's the same sign that's on his office door.
We're
It
not going
says
to talk about what neighborhood I live in, by the way.
it says it says no soliciting.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to solicit at this guy's office. You know, I really don't. But
Like
I
bother him, like keep
yeah,
following.
yeah. And I definitely didn't want to do that because people go by businesses. This is a very nice office in a nice place, nice area of town. And so, but I didn't feel like I was just supposed to go back and pray for 8 months. So, you know, faith, sometimes you put feet to it. So 2 weeks later, I was like, would it really be soliciting if I go get 40 biscuits from Chick-fil-A and I go get a gift and a card and I take it up there to his office? I mean, is it still soliciting when you bring 40 Chick-fil-A biscuits in?
No, because somebody's hungry
Hold
up
on.
there.
What kind of guy needs 40 biscuits?
His whole office ate.
His
Oh,
office.
okay. Like
Yeah.
okay. I'm thinking like, bro.
Yeah.
You could've
Third,
done, like,
it's like third of a
two.
football team there.
Yeah. So got back up there with the biscuits and everything. 2 weeks later, still doesn't have time to talk to me. I said, that's fine. You know, I went back and I'm like, if I go every week, it's probably going to be too much. So I waited about 2 weeks and I thought, you know, biscuits will probably wear them out. And so Krispy Kreme donuts was
Oh,
behind there.
boy.
So I got 3 dozen Krispy Kreme donuts. I went to Walmart behind there. I got a gift and a card. I've still
At
got a
some
picture somewhere on my
point-
phone of riding with that, riding up to his place, and I've got a little gift basket. I'd get a nice bag with a gift in it, with the card and with the food. And every single time I brought a gift, a card, and food. Every
I'm
single
not gonna
time.
lie. If that was me, I'd be like, let's just wait and see where this goes.
What
And
kind
then
of
he
gift
brought
can I
me
get
a
out of
car.
this?
So then I did that for almost a full 11 months. I think it was 10 months and 3 weeks. Every other week I took Chick-fil-A biscuits and
Holy cow!
Krispy Kreme donuts. I don't know how many I took.
I knew
up there.
you did that, but I didn't know how long
It was
Yeah,
almost a full year that I took it every other week, to the point that Anna had left and went to Alabama Power. She works at Alabama Power now. Claire had moved in her place there as the assistant.
Mhm.
I'd got to know Wayne. I'd got to know Anna. I'd got to know Claire. I'd got to know the people back here in accounts.
The staff.
They had to feel bad for you.
Everything.
The staff knew you were coming with biscuits, or you know,
And
they're
they
like,
knew
yeah.
why.
But I
Like,
wouldn't
they had-
press. I wouldn't press when I went in there. I'd just say, if they say he's busy, which was every time, I'd say, or not here. I'd say, hey, just make sure he gets this right here, and here's your. So I did that for a while, and really by about month, probably 8 or 9, I shifted in, because I already taken by that time scrapbooks of the history of the camp up
Yeah.
there. He had scrapbooks and everything, and so he knew historically, and that ended up being valuable to him because he loves history about places. I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
that was valuable to.
So
to
they
the whole
weren't
thing.
just gifts. You were actually there was persuasion there.
I bought Hobby Lobby wall decor. I bought books I stalked to find his kid's name and bought books for his kids with him and all kind of stuff. It was creepy, man. It would have been probably creepy to most people. But Claire had told me there's a table beside his desk, and the table was full of stuff that I brought for like 10 months up there. Just stuff, all kind of stuff up in there. And I finally got the conversation with him. He calls me. It was May of 2020. My daughter was about to graduate, one of my daughters. And we sat down at Applebee's in Chelsea in the middle of all the mess that's going on in the world. We still sat down there. He
Good
was on
old
his way down
Applebee's
to
was
the
open.
beach. I guess it was a Memorial Day weekend. And we had a long talk, about a little over 2 hours, I guess we spent talking, and a lot like we're doing now. And
Hour and 8 minutes.
Hey, I love it, man.
You're doing
I
it
could
great.
listen to you
So-
talk about this all night long.
so we sat down and talked for about 2 hours. I'm sitting across a millionaire. He's got a nice Mercedes, drives in, super nice guy, great businessman, very smart. Can't say enough good things about him. Sitting across the table from him, but he has this piece of property I believe belongs to the Lord. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's a problem. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm on assignment to try to save this piece of property, you know. And even my prayer, even if we didn't get it, was that no weapon formed against it would prosper.
That's
that
right.
any meetings that we're having behind the scenes that would cause it to fall out of the hands of Jesus didn't have to come in the hands of us, just fall out of the hands of Jesus. That those meetings, whatever was happening, would just fall apart.
Yeah.
Fall apart at the closing table if it
Right.
needed to. And we talked for about 2 hours, and then he asked me the 2 questions that I didn't want to be asked, and I didn't think about being asked, but I probably should have.
You knew they were coming, though. Yeah.
I really tell you the truth, I was so just, the Lord's going to do it,
Right.
and I'm not a business-minded guy
I'll
to
just
begin
show
with.
up and here we
I'd
go.
gave him the proposal, so I thought it was pretty good, but obviously it wasn't, because he asked me at the very end after like 2 hours. He said, "Now, how do you really propose to purchase the camp?"
Yeah.
And he said, "How much money do you have up front?" And I said, I really don't know exactly how God's going to do it. I just know He wants a chance to buy his camp back.
Mm-hmm.
And I said I don't have any money up
Yeah.
front, like I have none. And so I
Definitely
felt
not
like
too
I felt like I
positives.
wasted his time, because you're there for 2 hours, and it's almost like the small talk of working through family
Yeah.
stuff and where'd you come from, family history, all this stuff, and then at the end of it, it would have been nice to say, yeah, I mean, I got $250,000 up front.
Yeah,
and
sure.
here's exactly how the phase 1 and phase 2 is going through, but
Yeah.
I didn't have a dime.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't
So
have
wait,
anything.
your proposal didn't have any of that laid out? Or
My
was it just
proposal
not
was-
where you thought where he needed to be.
My proposal was all about fundraising,
Okay.
and it was about the local churches stepping in and
Gotcha.
actually helping out as far as redo the buildings and whatnot. So I had a proposal in there that I thought that's how the Lord was going to do it. Now, He hasn't
Yeah.
done it at
He
all
wanted
that way.
data. That's
Yeah.
what he wanted. He wanted you
Numbers.
to give
That's a
him
businessman,
He
right?
was looking
Sure
for a
is.
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That was it. I feel like if you would have
And I don't do spreadsheets. You
Did
know
he-
what I'm
like
saying?
a bar graph.
Did he
I'm
say?
not a
You know what I mean?
spreadsheet dude.
Look, a bar graph that shows the debt and it just goes like this.
Yeah.
Did he say why it took him 10 months?
Right off the bat.
What?
And it was a pretty legit reason. He said that 3 other organizations were interested in the camp and had approached them about it. And he said he didn't find it fair to reach back out to any of us until he had time to do all of us. And so his week of vacation, when he went for Memorial Day weekend, he finally had time
Yeah.
for all of us. Because you think about it, March, April, May, that was COVID. That was March, April, May was the very beginning of the chaos.
Right.
So you can just throw those months away.
Yeah.
Sure.
Ain't nobody meeting you for anything then. Everybody's dying, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's
Or they
right.
think they are,
Right.
But he basically
So he says, how are you going to pay for it?
Yep.
How much money do you have?
What's your
down?
plan and
Yeah.
how much money do you have?
And what did he say when you answered those two? Like
He
what was
just kind of sat back and looked at me like, what in the world are we doing here?
how does the
Yes, you know.
conversation move on from there?
So I didn't think it ever would. In fact, I called Kelly as soon as I left, and she knew, this whole time I've been out there, cutting grass and posting pictures. I posted pictures. You can look at my
Yeah.
page all the way
Oh,
back
yeah.
to 2018. Lord's going to save this camp and da-da-da-da-da, and all this stuff.
When I
and
first met you, I thought you worked in landscape. Like I knew you were a
Just a picture
pastor,
of
but I
the-
thought you were also worked in
I
landscape.
want to buy that mower back so bad. I was thinking about it last week because it just means so much to me. I just
Sure.
hang it from the ceiling somewhere in
Right.
some random building.
Bragging good.
So I thought I bombed it. I told Kelly, I said, hey, I bombed the first date. There's going to be no second date. That's it. He's done. And he texted me back, I think it was July of 2020.
So 2 months later.
2 months later, he texted me back. So keep in mind, I've been praying about it from October 2018. Now, this is July of 2020. So basically, we're at almost a year and a half,
Yeah.
into this thing. It took me 10, 11 months to get a conversation. And he sent me a text and said, check your email. Check my email. And he had like a proposal of, hypothetically speaking, if he sold the camp to us, this side of the camp over here, just the dry side with the joint shared lake usage, it would be $2.2 million at the time. And I was working out down at Chelsea Family Fitness. I got the text. I sat down in that little pew they have out the front, old church pew. I remember going back inside and thinking, all right,
There
I
you
must
go.
have.
That shuts that down.
I must have not heard you right, and so it's heartbreaking because you're a year and a half in. You finally got a conversation with somebody, and then you feel like that there's no way you can do it then.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I went back in, started working out, and I remember feeling convicted and thinking, why do I not have the same faith that I had this whole time up to now? And
Yeah.
am I buying it or is God buying it? If truly what I said to him was the
yeah,
Lord
what
wants
did
a
you think
chance
it
to
was
buy.
going to cost? Yeah, exactly.
What I thought it was going to cost, he bought 179 acres for $2.1 million. I was just buying back these 20 or 50 on this side or whatever. So I was prorating my mind back to 550.
Okay.
750 tops.
Yeah.
So when it came out to be more than the whole 179, I was like, bam, where in the world did that come from?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I didn't see that coming. So I was floored.
Yeah.
And if you did it by acreage, it would have, and what he had purchased it for, it would have been way less. It would have been
Sure.
$500,000, whatever.
Yeah.
So I felt convicted, and I felt like I just told the Lord he couldn't afford something.
Mm.
So I was like, all right,
Right.
we'll believe
Like you
for
had
him.
all the faith up until you heard the data, and then all of a sudden the
Yeah.
data replaced the faith.
And then I sent him a text back, and I said, hey, we'll find a way to do it.
Yeah.
We'll find it. Thank you so much. And so I was, y'all know the whole story about the.
Wait, you told him yes at that point.
I told him we're going to find a way to do it. I didn't
Okay.
tell him. I mean, yes. I mean,
So it
I'm
was
a
kind
yes
of
the
an-
whole time.
It was an
Right.
open
know.
offer from him.
It wasn't an open offer. It was just I just told him it looked good, and that I was going to find a way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know how to do it,
Yeah.
but I was going to find a way to do it. You know,
Now,
I
that
definitely
was-
wasn't saying no because I didn't want him going in a different direction,
Yeah,
especially after
sure.
you told me
Yeah,
there's three
You got
other
to leave
people
that
there.
door open while figuring out how to walk through it at the same time.
Yeah, so basically, then I just need to go find a couple $1 million somewhere. You know,
So
you know.
that kicked off. I remember that was kind of when I got, when I met you was I think August of 2020, and so that would have been right there around that same time. And if I remember correctly, this you had this big fundraising push that happened in the last bit of that year that kind of kicked this whole thing off, right?
No, that would have been 2021.
Was it? Okay, so you sat on this a lot longer than.
I was out there cutting grass for 2.5 years for free before I ever could even raise a dime for it.
It still took that whole amount of time for the
We would have
deal
dead periods of not talking to
Yeah,
each other.
to come
After
together.
that, it just kind of stayed there locked in whatever. I don't know if meetings were falling apart and deals are falling
Right.
apart. Well, I have no idea.
That's
but
my thing. Like, how did it not end up somewhere else in that time, that entire year and a
I
half?
believe it's the
you know?
Lord's. It
Yeah.
was.
no weapon.
Well, it has to be,
things,
right?
Things
It
are
has
falling
to- yeah,
apart
sure.
behind the
So
scenes.
so basically, what you were praying for of not, if it doesn't go to me, make sure that it goes where you want it to go,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
these meetings had to have been falling apart. They had to have been, because in a year and a half, a developer doesn't sit on a $2.2 million investment for that long without some plan being started, some motion being put in place, right? Nobody wants to tie their money up. So I guess I didn't realize it took that long, but that's a long time to not have an answer for him and also still have the opportunity.
So we met in August of 2020. I had another couple there in Chelsea that was going to donate a piece of property, and the proceeds were going to go towards the camp. And long story there as well. But I was pretty excited about that because I thought maybe I can do a land swap with him because he loves land. And so I got Daryl. Daryl and I went up because Daryl's a business guy. Y'all know Daryl. So I got Daryl to go with me up there, and I was like, hey, this is going to be great. Take my business friend up there. We'll bring this piece of property, and maybe we can do a swap, a land trade, a swap, and maybe still have a balance remaining, but it won't be exactly what it was. It won't
That's
be
right.
2.2. So we went in there, and the whole election thing was coming up. This is September. This is 2 months before election in November. And we met. I showed him the property. He loved where the property was and everything. Backside of balance trade. Hey, this is amazing. Piece of land. He said, here's our problem. He said, I have 31 investors invested in the development beside there, and Hargis was thrown into that development. And he said, the investors don't need more dirt. They need money.
Yeah, so it's not about what he wants at this point.
And so, at that time I was dejected. I had buried scripture down by the bench. I buried Proverbs 21:1. The heart of the king is in the hands of the Lord, like channeling water. He turns it whatever direction he chooses. I buried Philippians 1:6. God is faithful to complete the good work he began in Hargis. I'd go down there at midnight and pray. The story I'd held on to was a story of Nehemiah, where Nehemiah had a burden for something that belonged to the Lord that was laid desolate and left behind and not cared about and was falling apart. And he needed a yes from the king. And so, I had all this faith in there. My dad and I would go down there. My dad's, he's pessimistic, like it's not going to work, son.
Yeah,
But he helps you the whole time.
You swim in the lake, you're going to lose all your toes to snapping turtles, and it's all everything's whatever's going to happen bad, it's going to happen. You go outside, you're going to get hit by a meteor.
Yeah.
Just stay in the house, And for some reason, about 6 months into cutting grass out there, and I cut grass from July of 2019 when we were there at the camp. I cut the rest of that year, all of 2020 and all of 21. But from about 6 months in, all of a sudden my dad would pop out there with me, just bored to tears, I guess, and he would start weed eating while I was cutting grass. And so he just Dad and I out there,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
cutting this, and I got okay to be able to drive out there and cut grass, even though I wasn't getting paid for it. I could. Anna and them said, hey, you're welcome to go cut grass. You want to stay and pray over it. So I
And
just
this
took
is
ownership
like, this
of it.
is gates closed, locked, camp shut down.
It shut down in back way. If you rewind back, it shut down back in Labor Day weekend of 2019.
But,
it shut down.
but I mean, at this point, you're the only one there. Like Edelman's not doing anything with the property.
no,
at
no,
this
no.
time.
It's
Like,
just
it's
us.
just sitting idle.
It's just us. Yeah, if you rewind back to that, like when I was 11 months of taking cards and what up there.
Yeah.
About 9 months in, I did a shift in what I would write. Instead of, hey, I look forward to meeting with you, I just would give them an update on what we were doing at the camp.
Okay.
Hey, we trimmed the
Okay.
bushes around the pool, and now we've trimmed. I hadn't talked to them. I had one conversation, but I
Yeah.
shifted everything from an update on what we're doing at the camp.
Yeah, you're making
Almost
it
like
real.
we were, yeah, like we were working there or whatever. Me and my dad, hey, we painted
Yeah.
the benches
It's not a
down by the
hope
lake or
anymore. It's a
whatever.
reality.
But it
Yeah.
was no, there was no meeting before that.
Yeah.
So,
So when did you decide, like, I'm gonna do this?
So I almost quit. Coming out of that meeting, September 2020, I almost quit. I almost walked away from the whole thing for the first time. I had 2018, 2019. This was 2020. I almost walked away from the whole thing. I didn't pray out there in November, December of 2020 because I was kind of dejected because I got the no from the property and thought I was going to get something different. And about March of 21, I was going to go to this other piece of property these people were donating, and I thought, okay, well, maybe the Lord wants me to plant seeds of faith over here and actually build the camp over here on this other piece of property. It had an 8-acre pond, and it was 51.9 acres, and I was like, maybe the Lord's wanting us to do this right here. So I've got into my mind where I'm justifying, maybe the Lord wants me to do this, and I'm about ready to walk away from it. And a friend of mine, Leslie Drake, who's the pastor of the Love Ladies Center, called me. It was March of 21. I hadn't been out there praying in the last, few months before that. Was about to walk away from the whole thing, about to make the call to Edelman and say, I'm done. We're out. We can't do it. And Leslie called me, and I was on my way from Chelsea to Hoover home, and he called me. He just wanted to check on me, see how I was doing and whatnot. And I told him, I'm doing okay, yada, yada, yada. He said, how's the camp going and all that? And he said, you still cutting grass? And I said, no. I said, I think the Lord's calling me to go, build the camp over on this other piece of property. And he just wanted me to, it's kind of like in the Bible where they had vineyards that they didn't plant. Maybe right. I was planting seeds of faith over here, but it was actually going to crop up over here across town. And so I justified it all in my mind. And so Leslie said, well, let me ask you a question before you do that. He said, is that the Holy Spirit telling you to go do that, or is it discouragement? He said, which one is it? Mm-hmm. And I was like,
you knew which one it was.
Lie?
Yeah,
it's going to be a lie. I'll just say it's, the Holy Spirit saying to do this. Thus saith the Lord.
Yeah.
But here I am walking away from something I've been praying over for 2 years, but I look crazy to the world because everybody and their mama, telling me it's. Back on?
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
So,
everybody and your mama telling you it's.
That it's already sold, and that I'm crazy for out there cutting grass and all this kind of stuff, and I really do probably look a little bit crazy because like Drew's friends are coming out there to because they're having to ride out there because they need money to go out or whatever.
Almost like that's that guy that thinks he's going to buy the camp. Almost
pretty
dismissive.
Much.
Yeah.
So Leslie called me right when I was done. I was done with the whole thing in March of 21. I'm walking away from the whole thing. I'm going to start fundraising to build a big lodge over on this other piece of property, and I'm just going to move on from it. I talked to Kelly about it. We had kind of rationalized it and justified why we were doing it, whatever, and the Holy Spirit's leading us to do it. And then Leslie asked me that question of whether it was discouragement of the Holy Spirit telling me to do it. And so he asked me, he said, so you're not going to cut grass out there? And I said, probably not, because it was March. It was time to cut grass for the third straight year.
Yeah.
I cut 2019, 2020. This was March of 21. So either I'm going to drop the tailgate on the 5x10 trailer and pull that 42-inch, John Deere off there and go to town for the third straight year looking crazy, or not. And I really was like, I'm not. And he said, well, so you're not going to cut grass? And I said, probably not. He said, well, who makes the grass grow? And I was like, I guess the Lord makes the grass grow. And he said, well, whose grass is it? He said, is he named the developer? He said, is it his grass or is it the Lord's grass? And I was like, the whole earth belongs to the Lord.
That's right.
And he said, you're not going to cut the Lord's grass this year. And I'm like, brother.
Dang, man.
I said, I've cut the Lord's grass for 2 years now, and nothing's came from it. A bunch of no's and all this stuff came from it, and I'll just keep going back and doing it. You cut grass every 2 weeks on 25 acres for 2 years straight, and it just wears you out.
Yeah.
Mentally, even if you're praying, let the ruins come to life and singing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's still a chore.
So I tried to drive the conversation with Leslie that day away from conviction because I'm getting convicted because it was discouragement that was telling me that, and it was.
So anyway, how you doing?
It did. So I did. I said, so how are things going at the Love Ladies Center? So Leslie, if y'all don't know what the Love Ladies Center is, it's a center for women that are struggling with abuse and addiction and different things like that here in Birmingham. And I said, how are things going to the Love Lady Center? And he said, man, they're growing great. So they're, the Lord's moving in all these ways. And so I'm still trying to drive the conversation away from the camp and over to his world, and so I can get off the phone and go build the camp across the town. And I said, well, how's your wife doing? Everybody good, the family? And he said, oh, yeah, they're doing great. He said, well, yeah, Melissa said she got to preach for me on Wednesday night. And he said, I was gassed out and tired, and she actually preached, and so I'm still trying to drive the conversation. So I was like, "That's great, man. What did she preach about? Like, what was the message?" And he said,
I
"Oh,
feel
man."
like this is coming right back.
Yeah, he
Dun
said,
dun dun.
he said she preached on Nehemiah, and it was amazing, and how the ruins came to life, and what was laid desolate and belonged to the Lord was rebuilt, and God's hand and favor in the whole thing. And I'm over going on the line going,
So she preached on Hargis. is what-
Yeah.
gosh, dang. I'm like, brother, there are so many, literally, to this day, he and I talk about that. And they came out there that he comes out he's usually the first person every year. He and his wife come out, and I tell them because that conversation, as long as they want to come out there
Right.
and have a time, them of refreshing together, because he saved every bit of that day. When I hung up the phone, I didn't hear Leslie. I heard the Lord say that conversation was meant to be
For you to hear.
that
Yeah.
Nehemiah, the
Yeah.
encouragement of the ruins. So I was like, all right. I got off the phone. I didn't even tell him about it that time that's what that meant. I mean, he probably got off the phone that time and thought I was done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he
I
thought
didn't-
he thought he was unsuccessful at talking you
No,
off the
I told him
ledge.
later on. So I went home next day, brought the lawnmower back out there, started cutting grass. That was March of 21. So June of 21 comes around. I've been cutting out there since March. It's still nobody out there. Building's falling apart. Nobody's there. Gate closed, but I'm cutting grass again, third year straight. And I get a call from him, and he said, Aaron, he said, I got my son, got one of our engineers in here, got you on speakerphone. I've seen photos and videos of Winnetoska running full blast after COVID, and he said, I'd love to find a way to get the camp going. And so I told him, I said, I don't know what you mean as far as, because I still don't have money.
Yeah.
And I still don't have $2 million. Like I had $2 million all of a sudden. So I said, at least a purchase or what? And so he said, that'll be fine. And so I got together with my wife. She put everything in leather binders and made a really good proposal.
Ooh, fancier. That's
Yeah,
it.
no more
Yeah,
manila.
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 She went
Yeah.
leather.
So she put together two really good, two copies of a nice proposal. We took it into he and his son. They were very gracious in sitting down with us in June. We looked at it. They liked it, but we couldn't get everything kind of agreed on June, July, August, September. So everything kind of drug on. In October 15th, I finally get a call from him. We go sit down. We look at the proposal. We're really agreeing to it that day in principle.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that had changed was it moved from 2.2 million to 2.5 million. And I didn't know that. I get there and there's a stack of papers like this.
Sure. The legal contract. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm looking at it and I'm reading the verbiage in the front. Really tells you it gets into detail, but it tells you really the numbers on the front page. And the other prerequisite was that we had to pay $195,000 by Friday, December 31st of 2021. In order to get the lease to purchase option. We still have the option to lease
75
it.
days from then.
As
or
a
something.
down payment, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was like a little bit frustrated because I always thought for 2.5 years that I was going to have that moment with the Lord the day I got the contract, even just agreed in principle. The day I got it, I was going to take it. I was going to sit on that bench where I'd thrown the divorce papers in, where
That's
I'd gotten
right.
married at, and I was going to have this moment with the Lord. It was going to be this movie setting where I'm crying tears of joy, and God came through, and I got this contract in my hand, and it says I had to have $200,000 in the next few months, and as the total price went up to 2.5 million. And I thought during that season between our meeting in May of 2020 and October 21, which is almost a year and a half, that the price would go down.
Yeah. you
Yeah.
thought it was going the other
Somebody would
direction.
come in and say, I'm going to knock 500,000
Yeah.
off of it, and we'd go from 2.2 to 1.7, or we'd go from 2.2 to 1.2, and maybe somebody knock $1 million off of it, and there'd be some kind of, what God was doing behind the scenes was he was working all the favor to where I wouldn't owe but $1 million instead of 2.2 million. And instead it went up. It went to 2.5 million.
Right.
And so I left there, instead of being overjoyed, every negative emotion I could have.
Yeah, I could see that.
Doubt, sadness, anger. I was everything. I was 2 straight red lights when I left his office that I didn't just turn around and go back and give it back to him. I was just like everything to keep the truck on the road and not just turn around and say I can't do it.
Yeah.
And just
You just
forget
got
it.
good news that was bad.
Yeah. So I get back to the camp, and Roger Patterson's there at the camp. And he said, what's going on, brother? And he knows about the whole story and everything. And y'all met Roger. And so he's at the camp, and he's, well, what's going on, brother? He said, why do you look like that? And I said, well, I just got the contract from Edelman. He was like, praise God. And I was like, yeah, that's
Maybe
great.
not. Yeah.
And he said, well, why does your face not look like you got the contract? And I said, it went up to 2.5 million from 2.2, and I thought it would go down, and I have to raise $200,000, by December. And he said, man, brother, that's the best thing could ever happen to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're crazy.
You're right.
The best thing that could happen is if you had donated
Yeah,
it.
you and
Yeah.
I live 2 different lives.
Yeah, brother.
So he told me, he said, man, he said, it's going to be a journey for you to raise that money. He said, it would have been a journey for you to raise, $1 million.
Yeah.
$2 million. It'd be a journey. And he said, if it would have been $1 million, he said, the least amount it would be, we would have had the most worry. He said, because you would have thought that you could do it yourself and tried to do it on your own strength.
Oh,
He
that's
said,
good.
but what happened with you was, if you would have had $750,000, $1 million, you would have been over in the shallow end of the pool, doing it on your own strength, standing on your own legs. And he said, what the Lord did was drag you over the deep end,
That's right.
where the only way you can do it is if He shows up. So
That's
the
right.
pressure's off. Pressure's
Wow.
off. It's not you that has to do it. It's Him, because it's 2.5.
Yeah, it's something that you can't do by yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
so
good.
we went to.
That's a great way to look at things.
Yeah.
Like when you're in the deep end, it's because, like it's, I don't know. That I just had like an epiphany moment.
We
Like,
put that on a T-shirt.
that's impressive. Like instead of letting you live in the shallow end where you can hold yourself up,
Yep.
He
Yeah.
pulls you into the deep
Deep
end,
end.
not so you'll struggle, but so that you'll know that when you survive, it's because of Him.
Yeah. You're
And it's tell you the truth, it's really been less pressure.
Really,
Like the more money it was, the less pressure it was.
it was almost comical.
And I woke up last few years, like basically when you get in after property tax and everything, it was closer to $3 million than $2 million.
Sure.
So when you wake up owing somebody a few $1 million,
Aaron's
every
like,
day,
let's just make it 4.
no,
Lord, no.
no more deep end, Lord. Let's stay in the shallow. Come
so
on.
okay, so
I believe you.
I got my head up above water.
So this is definitely not the Cliff Notes version, but so you paid, you got. At this point, he's basically changed your mind. Like he showed Richard, or is it Richard?
Roger.
Roger. Yeah, Roger. Sorry, he's showing you like, suck it up. Like this is going to be good, right? And so you decide to go public with it at that point. Like,
Yeah, we went public. Actually, I told the church on October 31st. It was a Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm just about positive on that. Halloween Day, I believe, was a Sunday. You can look at it in 21.
Yeah.
I believe it was a Sunday. I told the church. We went public as far as like fundraising. We couldn't really go public till we knew we were about to get the thing. There were 3 easement agreements that weren't in there. The lake fill lines
okay.
and the cross. And so when we noticed at the October 15th meeting they weren't there, we had to wait. I couldn't get any money from anybody donating wise. First we had to set up nonprofit status.
That's right.
yeah,
And then we also had to wait till we had everything notarized and signed, because I wasn't going to start trying to get a check from somebody here or there and have to give it back to them, because I needed it
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Ink on paper.
And you couldn't push any kind of fundraising until you got those final.
those details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think October 31st.
It led up to what?
Did y'all went out there October 31st? didn't
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
So October 31st, if there was one special moment
Hmm.
with that camp, and it's been 2 years now, and we've seen some special moments.
Sure.
If there was one special moment for me that I'll never forget. I'll never forget the emotions of it. Is that Sunday? I even had Rusty go down there and blow off leaves and stuff in the road. Russ will do whatever.
Yeah.
But I think Russ and my dad went ahead and blew off leaves in the road and whatnot. And so I asked the church to go pray about it. We really wanted the church to be involved, and I asked the church to go out there and pray after service that we are going to have the gates open and everything, because they had heard about it for years. From
That's right.
My
Yeah.
2018, when I started talking about it. And finally happened, and so the opportunity finally happened. Finally had the contract in hand, so I felt like I could tell the church, but maybe not tell everybody else yet. And we drove out there, and I got stuck at the door. I always like to shake hands at the door after service.
That's right.
Like an old school preacher, you shake hands at the door and whatnot, and kiss babies or whatever you do, or shake babies and kiss hands,
wrestle
whatever.
kids.
Some people in this room value that.
So I got stuck at the door while everybody else made it out to the camp before I did. And so just imagine this. You're at this camp. It's beautiful. It's got a 25-acre lake. You walk from the upper fields down to the lower fields, and you see the lake from a little ways off. And I had been out there at that time since October of 2018, and really by myself,
Alone,
with
yeah.
nobody else out there from Labor Day weekend of 2019 all the way till October of 21. So this has been 2 years and 1 month that I've been out there by myself or just with my dad. No kids out there, nobody out there. You're out there at night. I got pictures of my dad out there at midnight with me, singing worship music, sitting by the lake, walking to the cross, listening to the same 5 worship songs, cutting that grass over and over again, never seeing a single kid. Now, after we've been there 2 years and you see kids everywhere, it's totally different. But then there was nobody. I could hear the geese every time I went out there. Nobody was there, and I went from, in 2019, seeing kids there while the wild was there, them shutting the doors and not being able to dream because you didn't see kids there, to finally on October 31st, 2021, coming back out there on that Sunday. And everybody was parked down there by the cafeteria. Cafeteria's in bad shape, totally different color, all that stuff. I parked up at Tyne Davis because everybody was there. And I walked down to the lake. And as I came past the swimming pool, kids came running across the
They didn't care
the
a
field.
second about you being there. They were just enjoying it.
They were in their world, man.
Yeah.
Totally broke me.
Yeah.
Totally broke me. I was 2 years of total silence, of not seeing, not hearing a kid's laughter,
Yeah.
not seeing a kid there. And when I drove up that day, I had to park all the way up time because everybody was parked down here.
Yep.
And as I came down past the pool, there's like 20 kids chasing each other, and they're laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I broke down. I mean, I just broke down like in an instant.
Sure.
Like had to duck back behind the cafeteria because I didn't ready myself. I didn't say, okay, you're fixing to walk down here and you're going to hear kids here for the first time, and that's what the whole place is about.
Absolutely.
You know,
So-
God was readying you for that by
Dude.
holding you at that door at church.
We when they ran across, like laughing and playing, I sat back there on the dock for a minute, and I was like, I got to get a hold of all of this, like, and go down here and have fun and whatnot. And I jumped in the lake with them that day, and
Sure.
but it was like everything was finally right. Even if the money wasn't there yet,
Yeah.
kids were back there again and everything. So my dad, very reclusive guy, he had been out there with me for that 2 years, and he's up at A-frame, which is up on the hill, and I
Yeah.
hear his 2 dogs barking, so I know he's up there.
Yeah.
He's up at A-frame on the hill, and he's not coming down there because there's a bunch of people, and he's not a big people person. He's
Yeah.
getting better every day.
He
with
is.
it.
He is.
I will say that. He is.
But
Still
this time
calls
he
me
was
Billy,
really-
but that's another story.
Yeah, he was really reclusive at this time, but he had been out there with me and dreaming with me, and he waited till every single person left that day, and I was the only one left there at the camp, and all the kids went on, and we played and everything, and he drove down through the camp, and he looked at me, and I remember exactly what he said. He said, "Son," he said, "even the trees needed to hear those kids laugh tonight."
Man.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he and I we were broken, dude.
Yeah.
I'm talking about we were
Yeah.
just I mean,
That's
it's
awesome
it's,
moment.
it's
Yeah.
a lot of faith. I'm not gonna say doubt, but quitting and believing, and it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and
It's emotions from up and down, up and down. Yeah.
it's a lot. It's a whole bunch. I mean, it's 2.5 years of cutting grass. That's a lot of gas money. It's
Yeah.
stalking him for 10 or 11
It's a lot of
months.
dang
There's
biscuits
just a
and
lot
donuts.
of time
Yeah.
that goes into this, and to see those kids chase each other across there that day, I was just like,
That was what you needed.
It's all worth it.
Yeah, that was
Oh
what
my
you
God.
needed. Yeah.
oh my God, it just gave me so much energy. I mean, it broke me in the moment, but it gave me so much energy at that point. So we get we finally get the thing notarized December 6th. So basically, we got 25 days from that point to raise $195,000, which I'm not a fundraiser.
And it's Christmas.
It's Christmas.
It's the season when everybody's spending money on everything already.
Yeah. So I didn't really know what to do as far as like I didn't know how GoFundMe's go. I've never done one of those or anything like that. So I felt like what the Holy Spirit was saying to do was write the local business owners handwritten letters and deliver them, which didn't seem like the best method. Again,
Very old school.
very old school.
Yeah.
You know, it's like not like this is the 1800s. We have copiers and stuff like
Like
that.
a-
Why don't you just print off one letter
Yeah.
that says the same thing?
You could have
Need a
sent it with
telegraph
pigeons,
or
But I
something.
felt like it was, Dr. Honea, dear
Yeah.
Dr. Honea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's so heartfelt. That's
Yeah.
so, that's
And I told them, I basically was asking them to give to something that may not even be ours come
Sure.
January 1st, because if we don't make the 195, all we're doing is leasing. We're not lease to purchase, but we all give to it. And it was already tax deductible at the time, but it still, you were giving to something that may not even be there.
Yeah.
It took off, though. The Lord blessed it. It took off, and we were supposed to take him $195,000 on Friday, December 31st by 5 o'clock. And we took him $196,000 by Thursday, the 30th, by 5 o'clock. And then by the end of the day, by 5 o'clock on that Friday, we had raised $235,000, 25 days. We got after it.
Incredible.
And then the next
Yeah.
year, all of a sudden, camp started coming in. We weren't even going to open the doors for camp because the whole facilities were in such bad shape. And then all of a
That
sudden,
people stepped up there too.
yeah, it was
immensely.
crazy. Man, Brett fixed 5 toilets in one night. Man, he's a legend over there when it comes to plumbing. The man was fixing a toilet over here with one hand and another one over here with one hand. I still got pictures of him sitting backwards on the toilet. But yeah, we had to get the health department off our back that June, and Brett was up there till late at night. But so many people helped out with that. And then we started taking off with the money and whatnot. It was
So tell us where you're at now. Like what's the status of the fundraising?
so we're supposed to have had the whole thing paid coming up at the end of this year by December 31st this year. We're supposed to have the whole 2.5 paid. We're way behind on that, but done really, really well. In that we've booking out with our schedules. The main thing is over 200 people have made a decision for Christ there this year. I'd probably say about 400 in the last 2 years.
Wow.
Over 400 baptisms the last 2 years. Those are the things that really count, the numbers that we look at.
Yeah.
And then we're booking out as far as camps. Everybody that came in 22 in the summer came back in 23, and then some more. So we're booking out all the way through all our weekends. But as far as what we paid on the 2.5, we paid 1.4 million as of 22 months in. So we basically got about 3 more months, and one of our tentative goals is to raise the 600,000 and get us right at 2 million paid in 2 years by December 31st. And we've got a few business owners that have said that they would take on that 500,000 and let us pay them back. And so we
So
can
a
get
loan, not a
yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to pay it off. But I don't listen. I feel good about it.
yeah.
Like
You should.
I feel like not only we raised the 600,000, I feel like the Lord made us go ahead and pay this thing off. I have no
Yeah.
idea how that works because I'm tired of figuring them out.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like I told a
Well,
group the other day.
I feel like the theme of this story about Hargis is you've never had any idea how it's going to work the entire time,
no.
and here we are.
He picked a person that had probably one of the worst backgrounds. I would say that's a pretty bad background. I mean, I've dealt drugs for years. I came through a divorce. I mean, I've tried to take my life. It's everything. I'm not saying that it's the worst background ever, but it's a pretty bad.
Sure.
I have no business sense, and I can admit this. I have zero business sense whatsoever. I don't even know how to use a computer.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Like y'all are in robotics, like. Man, if I can't put it in
Other
my
side of
hands
the
and like
spectrum.
dig a hole with it or something, or like a drill.
I don't see that. I see somebody that God put in this place that's really good at bouncing off of the rock bottom,
Yeah.
off of rejection, off of problems
Yeah.
coming your way. I see somebody.
say faith,
that
yeah.
can
Very
handle.
very resilient.
Yeah.
You know.
The church coming back together, and all that.
Yeah.
That was a big thing as far as a faith builder for me. And that season helped my faith in this season, I
Right.
think.
Yeah.
But as far as a business sense or fundraising, I was as green as they get.
Right.
I'm
you,
talking
you
about.
can put people in place to handle that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't. I just go tell the story. And
So,
I didn't invite
okay,
the
so-
spring folks.
But really, you may think you weren't great at the fundraising, but you were built for that moment because of all the relationships you have built over the years, right?
Oh yeah, without realizing it, you had to.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So those relationships has built up to
It's so funny how different you see
Yeah.
your life as opposed to how everybody around you sees it.
Yeah.
I've seen my whole life.
Yeah.
I
It's
know.
not always been glorious, and it's
Yeah.
still not glorious,
I'm just saying,
But-
it seems like you're confused that we're telling you this.
I think
You-
so.
you're a man that's very hard on yourself,
Yes.
and
I
you,
will tell you what I might have been good at.
yeah,
that-
Might have. See, might have.
So if there's one thing, probably one value or trait that I think I was very comfortable in uncertainty, like
Mhm.
very comfortable. Like if you're homeless for your last 2 years of high school and you don't know where you're going to live from
Right.
moment to
you're
moment,
comfortable being uncomfortable.
and then you're
Okay.
in the back seat of a
Yes.
car.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
understand it at first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I've said before. I do find when I get too comfortable, like if I'm just at church and we're just going through the motions, we're doing the same thing every week, da 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 da.
Yeah.
I feel like there's something God's called us to do, something. And I think those moments came from sleeping in the back seat of the car when I graduated.
Sure.
From, places it's self-induced things, but it was also seasons of uncertainty, whether I put myself in it or not. And then
yeah.
the
Things that
church the
not
same way.
everybody can understand. So that struggle, you're it's kind of an inner struggle.
Yeah. I had no idea how to pastor a church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they asked me to pastor the church, I'm like, dude, I've never been a janitor at a church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In fact, everything I've done has been at Bessemer City Jail or the Foundry Rescue Mission or Donaldson Correctional Facility, or even when I was at Highlands, it was all I did outreach.
Yeah.
So I was never like in the church,
You're
and then
always
like, hey, why don't we
going,
run
yeah.
a church? I'm like, I don't really know much of anything that's
All
in the
I'm
church.
hearing
I just know
is
that
I
out
was
the church.
built for this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I'm hearing.
Maybe.
You literally just said, if there's one thing I'm good at, it's being comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm the antithesis of my wife. My wife loves comfortability.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think even down to, Kelly's still at the school, but she does so much for the camp, so much she does behind the scenes with all the, summer camps and all that different kind of stuff.
She's the director.
But I think if
Right?
she, yeah,
Okay.
and it's mainly for the summer camps, but then she also does all the like scheduling and different
Okay.
stuff. But I think if she had to see the money all the time, like I had to take all the money. If she saw the $8,500 power bill in July,
Oh yeah, it'd freak her out.
Like, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And those things, I've had times where I was just like, man, I was such a jerk because of all this stress and
That's
pressures
the
on
crazy
me.
thing too. That a lot of people don't realize this is not just a fundraiser to pay the camp off.
Oh yeah,
Like
You had to rebuild
you
buildings.
you've
Yeah.
got to operate the camp. You've
Yeah.
got to pay for the utilities. You've got to. There's licenses. There's insurance required. There's so much stuff in operations that just because you get $100,000 donation does not mean that the balance of that camp goes down by $100,000.
yeah.
Right? It
Well-
still has to operate as a camp, and so there's so much more to me
Yeah.
needed than just the balance.
We've done so many things the wrong business way in the last 2 years. The total wrong business way. And thank God I've got an amazing board of 2 people that just say, whatever you think, man,
Yeah.
it's worked so far,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what we wanted to do was take a board out of it, so we limited it. As myself and 2 others, and we just decided we were going to have faith with it. If the Lord says to do something that doesn't make business sense,
Well, I
and
think if you bring a normal board in, you don't ever get this.
It
far.
becomes a business.
we wanted a limited amount of man's hands on it, including myself,
Well-
and the more amount of the Lord's hands.
And talk about the trust, because I know that's a big part of this. That's the whole problem with how it got sold in the first place.
Yeah,
Right? Was you if I remember, you told me you don't ever want this. You want to ensure that this stays a Christian camp for the remainder of its time.
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a big question we get is, are y'all going to own the camp? Are we paying into something that like people
Yeah,
look at something
yeah.
like, are we paying your retirement for you to
Yeah,
just go down
yeah.
there and have some paid off camp or whatever? But me growing up beside the camp, I started going there in '78 when I was 5. It just had value to me, even in the middle of my crazy living and all that kind of stuff. But now seeing what it's doing, we wanted it to not be in man's hands. Even the payoff of it, not just board wise and all that. But so it was owned by a church before, First Christian, from '64 all the way to '99, and they ended up selling to the YMCA, who sold to a developer. Well, we're like, how do we put it in a place where it can never happen again?
Yeah, because you can't control your grandkids and their kids,
Yeah.
and so on down the line.
So we didn't. Obviously, I stepped down from the church back July 30th, and we didn't. Before then, when the whole thing started, we didn't want to put it in the church's name upon payoff, because one, they would have the burden of all that finances, had to deal with and whatnot.
Right.
And I think it would have put it in more of man's hands and less of God's hands.
Sure.
And I didn't trust whoever came after me to not just sell the thing and pay off the church and not care about it after you're stalked them.
Because they don't have
Yeah.
the same
Yeah.
vision you have. They make you
Yeah.
see that as a burden. Yeah.
And that's what happened before. A church had it when Giltner passed away. Years
Yeah.
later, they ended up selling it. I didn't want it to be in Kelly and my hands, because I don't think any individual. It belongs to the Lord, so I don't think you can give it to any individual.
Sure.
We don't want it. I love it. You know what I'm saying? And I
Right.
would do everything I could do to take care of it. But if something happened to Kelly and I, we don't know. I mean, I love my kids, but I don't know what Drew's going to do with this thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
I love the boy. You know what I'm saying? I
Get
hope
a
the
big old
best.
nice house.
He may, Drew would turn into some kind of shooting camp or
Yeah.
something. Ain't no telling what'll happen down there. You
Have
know?
machetes everywhere.
Yeah. But I trust all of the kids, but I still didn't want it to be us and our family. I wanted it to be the Lord. So we just have it now where it's owned by Hargis Christian Camp Incorporated, which is still nonprofit and it has an ink on it. And then it written into the bylaws, it cannot be sold or developed. It has to remain a Christian camp for its existence. So if something happened to Kelly and I, the board's got to find somebody to run this place. So
Yeah.
we wanted to lock it in and not have to do this fight again.
Yeah.
It's a fight, raise
Sure.
$2.5 million, rebuild
Absolutely.
buildings, get the schedule back up. Everything's a fight. So I'd
Yeah.
hate to be heartbreaking to go through all of this and then somehow another 5 or 10 years down the line it be pulled out of our hands and
Yeah, all
Yeah,
that for
houses
nothing
around it.
because somebody doesn't have your vision. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, this is a long podcast.
Pretty
this
much.
is longer than all 3 of our first episodes.
If you're doing windshield time, this would be a good 2-hour job. Man.
Yeah,
Birmingham,
like if you're
Montgomery.
headed to Atlanta,
Yeah.
pop it in and hit play, or the beach or something.
Listen to it twice.
Yeah, listen to it twice. It's good. There's Aaron.
So have we even named the camp? Do they know what to go look at if they wanted to see
No,
a
you need
visual
to
of this?
tell them where to go.
Yeah. So I'm gonna
Yeah,
close.
yeah.
I'm gonna close out with that.
Right.
So, on top of all of that, like I'm gonna put all the information in the description, and you'll have. I'll try to link to the page for it and how you can donate. Like I'm gonna put all the information because That's why I wanted to make sure and mention the camp before we close this episode, because I want people to know about it, because I feel like you said, I feel like that person is out there. That person that ran into you at that intersection and had a note for you.
Yeah.
He didn't know that he was going to run into you. He didn't know. All he knew was, I've got something, and I need to give it to. It needs to go somewhere. And so maybe that person is listening to this podcast. I don't know. I just know that the more we can put it out there, the more chance there is that.
I hope it's encouraging. I hope somebody
Yeah.
takes it and says,
100%.
"Hey,
At a
God can do
minimum.
anything,"
at a minimum.
if you just run it out with Him. Just
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not going to be easy.
it's not gonna be easy. I have all this gray hair right here, and the hair I have left is a lot of it's
It's
gray.
okay
I
to be
think.
uncomfortable.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you guys for listening. An hour and 51 minutes worth of the ManCast episode
amazing.
4. We got Mr. Aaron Knight. If you guys want to donate to Hargis, you can basically Google Hargis Christian Camp, right? Hargis Christian Camp in Chelsea, Alabama. They have a Facebook page. I'll link all that. But what's the best way to donate? Like the best form, is it? Do you have a Venmo? Do you have write a check, mail a check? Like, what's the best way somebody can donate?
There are 3 ways. If you, like he said, if you Google Hargis Christian Camp, it'll take you to the website. On the website, it gives you 3 ways to donate right now. We're trying to open up Venmo if we can.
Okay.
It's just been hard to figure out how to link all that stuff, and I'm not tech savvy. I need to
Sure.
get back
Yeah.
with our guy. Nick, the marketer, has helped us out so much. I need to get back with Nick. But on there, you can mail a check to Post Office Box 226, Chelsea, Alabama 35043.
See, this is how untechnology he is. I'm just going to write all this in the description. Nobody's
yeah,
going to
yeah.
write.
But anyhow, you'd make the check out to Hargis Christian Camp, and then also there's a way to click on PayPal on there, and you can give like one time, or you can also be a monthly donor. So a lot of people have moved to. They don't go to a church right now, and so we have several people that have said, "Hey, man, we just want to, give our tithe or offering or whatever
Yeah.
to the camp." And so we have one lady that gives $1,600 every single month. She's done it since the very beginning, since December 21.
Yeah.
It's been incredible, and
It's
y'all know who
amazing.
that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're amazing people.
the
Yeah.
monthly donations have been the things that sustain us, because the power bill keeps coming in.
Sure.
The lowest power bill is $4,000. The highest one's been $8,500 for a month.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then,
and here's the other thing. You're a 501(c)(3).
yeah,
So it's all tax write-off.
Yep.
Like if you're a business, if you have a business and you're looking to clear some extra profits at the end of the year, this is a great opportunity to put your money into something that literally is, the epitome of the Lord's work.
I tell them this is literally how I look at this myself, because I didn't take a single dime for this place for 4 years, 4 solid years of cutting grass and all that. Even the first year and a half, almost 2 years of running the camp with camps back in there. It's a place that I believe, if you like investing, if you believe investing, if you believe the Bible, if you believe in the Lord, if you love kids, like we do stuff with special needs kids, all different kinds of kids. But I think it's a place that you can make an investment. Like you can make an investment here and things. I can tell you about the stock market. You can make an investment that'll bring a return, hopefully, even though our economy is crazy.
Sure.
They can make an investment here for you and your children to tangibly touch here. But this investment makes an investment in the here and now, in the physical realm now, and makes an investment in heaven.
Yeah.
Because of all the souls that are saved, but then also all the sowing into, because our target's kids. So all the sowing into the kids makes this world better that we're living in.
Yeah.
This
This is what we need.
Yeah, all your
This
kids
is
are
what went
growing up
away,
here.
I
Yeah.
feel like, that caused this massive change in our society.
So you're sowing into the future of the world here physically through the kids that are coming out there, through the lives that are changed and whatnot, but then also sowing into heaven in eternity in
Yeah.
the salvations and whatnot. So there's not a better investment.
Yeah,
Sure.
I mean,
absolutely. There's not a more multifold way to get a return on your investment.
we literally today, this is probably one of the dumbest crazy business moves. When I say we don't make dumb business moves, we don't misspend money, but the Lord's asked us to give away so many things with this camp, and every time we do, something big happens. Like
Sure.
we did all these special needs groups this year for free because they're they don't have money.
They don't have funding.
So they came in. We had all these different schools came in with special needs. They did a lot for free. So we just decided we had a local group come in this weekend. Had a couple of salvations and a local group here from Chelsea, and they bring us their check. I actually saw one of their guys, Coach Marshall, this morning.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Hey, I got your check." And I said, "Look, keep the check." I said, "You're our Jerusalem. You're who we're going to give to here,
Yeah.
locally." And so we want to. So we believe in it so much.
Sure.
Their kids come out to the camp. They have discipleship. They have salvations. And so we're like, we want to sow into that ourselves, even though we're providing the property to do
Sure.
it in. We want to sow into it. So we
Yeah.
just told them,
Yeah.
keep your check and put it back in the scholarship kids to come back next time. That's
Yeah.
exactly
It's
what we
blessing
told them.
people to
That's
bless
awesome.
others. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times that you've met with people and see with you, when I'm with you, and they're like, "What do you mean you're giving stuff for free? What do
Yeah,
you
like
mean
you're not in a position to do that.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right. But it makes sense.
Absolute sense.
And,
$1.4 million in 22 months doesn't make sense. I don't know how it
Yeah.
happens, but the more we give or try to do or just do whatever the Holy Spirit says to do, even if financially it doesn't make the most
Yeah.
sense, we'll have some ridiculous person say, "I want to donate $100,000. This
Yeah.
happened a few times.
Mhm.
And right on the times and the heels of us saying, "We're going to give this."
Yeah.
And it'll be like $2,000 or $3,000, but at the time it'll be such a step of faith where we're at.
That's
yeah,
right.
because you'll
And
be
then-
sitting looking at a $3,000 light bill, and you tell a guy that was bringing you a check for $3,000 to keep it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can remember the time that I think the camp was down to almost pennies, right? And
Yeah.
you've got bills coming in, and boom, here it comes. Like I think it was like $35,000 to pay those light bills to pay those.
We went
things.
from about $500 to $80,000 in 3 days. And I
Yeah.
was so mad at God.
Yeah.
I was like as mad as I could be.
I love the story too. when
Wait, what? You went from what?
Went from about $500 to $80,000 in about 3 or 4 days,
Yeah.
and I was so angry with it. It was August of 22.
Was this when you were mowing and you see?
I was mowing, and so Jeff.
You were
see the
mad?
blessing? Yeah.
So I was stressed out coming out of the first year because I'm thinking, is he going to close the doors on this place or whatnot? And we're already having campers come in there. This is August of 22.
And this is you weren't hitting the goals that you felt like you need to be hitting financially.
We needed to have 1.125 paid the first year, 1.125 the second year, and we were coming out of our summer season. So I knew the meat of the income we'd have.
yeah,
revenue was done. We had Asbury coming in. I was cutting grass for them in the upper field. They were coming in August. We had $5,000 in the bank. The Alabama Power bill was due. I had to go to Bearden the next Monday. I think it was $4,500, so it was going to leave us with $500. And we're at the end of our revenue season, but we're
Yeah.
giving the developer everything we can to pay this thing off. We're just like taking chunks.
Yeah.
Well, if a chunk's 5,000 or 20,000, we're taking. I think we took 56,000 in that in August, and so I'm taking everything, but then it's taking us down to $500.
Yeah.
So Jeff Champion Jeff's a great guy. He
Yeah.
had done all of our work out there for free, still has to this day. And he had said that he and his wife were going to donate a unit because all the heat and air units are so bad. He said that he and his wife were going to donate a unit. Well, the unit in the big area of Ty and Davis, one of our lodges, had went out. And I was upset with the Lord. I was kind of grumbling inside. I was letting him have it, but I wasn't saying it out loud. So I was like, I can get away with this, whatever. So I'm like, God, if you're not going to provide, this is what I'm thinking. I'm
Right.
riding this lawnmower up and down this field, and I'm like, it's August. We just came out. I'm stressed. We just came out of summer camp. I'm about to have $500 after I take this power bill on Monday. I didn't think Asbury had. I thought they had already paid their stuff.
Right.
So I'm upset with the Lord, kind of giving it to him in the spirit as I'm driving this lawnmower up and down the field. And I look across the field, and there's a brand new condensing unit on the side of Ty and Davis. And I'm like, man, Jeff Champion done came in here and changed out that unit because he knew it was dead. Changed out the whole system, which would have been about $10,000 with all the line sets and labor and the
Yeah.
air handler and condensing unit and all that stuff. And I'm looking at this brand new unit that was put there that's sitting up, and it's took place of the low profile rusty unit that I'm so used to seeing out there. And I'm seeing it across the field. And I look down and I'm driving this X-Mark mower that Bill Willis donated. It's a $14,000 mower, brand new mower he donated. So I'm looking at a $10,000 donation, driving a $14,000 donation. I'm just telling the Lord, when are you going to provide? And I'll just walk away from this whole thing. If you ain't going to do it, it's yours. And and I'm just like, in my spirit, I'm just so upset. I'm just like frustrated. I'm tired from summer camps. And then I look and see that donation. I'm riding one donation. I got off the mower, and I'm like, God, if we go down to a penny,
Yeah.
I'm just going to believe. So the very next week, Kelly has some friends that actually the outdoor worship area is named after these people now. They had a endowment or trust or whatever, and they have to donate $50,000 a year. So they picked us. The next week, they wrote us a $50,000 check.
Mm-hmm.
Then a guy named Craig that used to live up there as a maintenance guy, loved the camp, shows up out of the blue that afternoon to drop his son off for the Asbury retreat, brought $15,000.
Yeah.
And then Asbury hadn't paid their stay yet, and it was over $8,000. And then I had somebody else come in and pay like $2,500. We went from like $500 a day, $80,000. But I think it was a moment of repentance. I just had to step off the mower and go,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
if we go down to a penny,
Yeah,
Right.
it's gonna be good.
gotta stick it through.
All right, we went back into another story.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it. I can sit here. And
There's a million of those
I
stories.
could sit here and talk
Absolutely.
forever. I'm just running out of camera battery or camera storage.
yeah.
So I appreciate you coming on. I think it was awesome.
Amazing.
We couldn't have picked a more perfect first guest for this podcast, and I hope to have you back again. If you guys want to follow the podcast, you can follow it on all of the all of the podcast channels, your normal streaming outlets, or you can watch the video on YouTube if you're watching it now and you want to see the video, so you can see what Aaron looks like. So if you see him out in public, you can hand him a check yourself.
Yes.
But thank you again for coming on. Thank you guys for doing this, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.